Five.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Lake Worth Beach Special City Commission meeting of Thursday, May 15th, 2025. May we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Betty Rush,
Here.
Vice Mayor Sarah Maliga,
Present.
Commissioner Christopher McVoy,
Here.
Commissioner Mimi May,
Present.
Commissioner Anthony Segridge.
Present.
Thank you very much. Pledge of Allegiance.
Actually, that's good for her next year, teacher, because I want you to get 5 next year.
I was going to ask, in terms of additions, deletions, reordering, I see two things that are fairly quick. Are there, if there are like the Bejo Cohen PA for representation related to the Able 24 day, is that something staff is here only for and could go home if we did it earlier? Or is that something we don't have staff here for?
Yeah,
Well, you
Glenn's
stay.
here for us.
Your command.
He's not going home early.
And the post-closing occupancy agreement, is anybody here that we need to move? It's because we have a couple of things which might engender a certain amount of conversation.
We are here all night.
No, we're not.
I agree with that proposal to
Speaking
move
of
those two.
which, yeah,
Move them up.
so what? Well, if there were staff sitting around waiting for that new business B, I would say we should not make them torture them and make them sit through parking and turf. And the first addendum to the post-closing occupancy seems fairly straightforward. In terms of like rules today, new rule. Everybody gets 5 minutes. And I'm going to ask the clerk to bear with me on this one and keep track. At the end of everyone having 5 minutes, it gives us 5 minutes leeway. We will then vote either to continue it, to have a workshop on it, or to, this is in keeping with our 30-minute rule about having a workshop. And last time we met, we did extend it for, I think, 15 minutes. So tonight, it's going to be 5 minutes. Everybody gets 5 minutes. And then at the end of that 25 minutes, we'll have 5 minutes to discuss it and either keep going or stop and go have a vote or go to workshop. So I just want everyone to be aware of that. Madam Clerk, is that something you can help us with timing, or should I do that?
Certainly, I'm timing everyone individually for their 5 minutes, and then I will time the collective 5 minutes at the end.
Okay, thank you very much. I know it's a lot, but I really appreciate it. I think it'll keep us
Can I-
moving.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
We've already workshopped the artificial turf, so
We have workshopped it to death.
We've shopped it like
Well, but that's what I'm
magnitude?
saying. I mean, if, you know, if somebody wants to go for 5 minutes,
Okay,
not 10. It's me. And
Is the 5 minutes consecutive?
doesn't have to be. We're going to ask Shayla to really keep track of that. And that's really a pain in the neck.
I understand that. I
But it's
just
like you
wanted to
can- You can
clarify.
reserve 2.5 to whatever you want to do.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
And I'm going to, Shayla, I'll try to keep track with you. Mr. McVoy, you had your light on?
Thank you. Yes, two things. One, I would just like to request of my colleagues, the request that I have made a number of times before. Could we please adopt as a policy that for special meetings, for workshops, we simply add language, just the same way that we have language that says adopted rules and person decides, blah, blah. Put language clearly, maybe right under adjournment, whether voting will be allowed and whether public comment will be accepted. I think it's a courtesy to our residents to simply clarify, because people don't remember whether a special meeting yes or a special meeting no. or
That's
what
easy enough, but I think in terms of whether we're going to vote or not, I mean, that always sort of remains to be seen. But special
Well,
meetings, well, no,
the
special
possibility of vote.
special meetings have the possibility of a vote. Workshops do not. So I think that's pretty clear.
Uh,
But the other thing, I agree, that's fine.
So I'd request formally, reiterate my request that we explicitly put that in writing on each special meeting, each workshop. So it's clear, nobody has to go waste time looking up, is there, isn't there? It just is especially the public comment aspect. because they're different and people don't remember and, you know, you don't necessarily notice that it says special
Except
city.
sometimes at workshops, we vote at when we get there to let them, you know, let public comment, but I
Yeah,
think, okay, so what you're saying is that underneath, just have in parentheses, public comments allowed, public comments not allowed.
exactly.
All right.
And just simply stated.
Yeah, we can do
The
that.
other question that I had was a question for the city attorney. The mayor has proposed a rule on the speaking. Can the mayor unilaterally propose that and we have to adopt it, or is that something that we actually have to vote on? And I'd like clarification on that because I don't know.
Oh, that's
Oh,
really
now
on
it
now.
is.
Okay. Generally, the mayor or the chair of a meeting sets the ground rules for the meeting. If anyone wants to challenge that, then there could be a vote to quote overrule the mayor. So, but if she's establishing that for today's, you always have the 30 minutes. So you're saying 5, 5, 5, 5. If someone wants to
Right,
challenge
then
that,
no
they
one
could,
monopolizes the
right. So they could be, you can make a motion to say, no, we don't want to do that. But if three of
30
you,
minutes is our limit anyway. So
Yes.
that's just sort of stopping and saying, are we going to keep going or are we going to stop? But if someone takes 15 minutes, then it gives very few people any chance. So I am going to try that tonight and see how that goes.
And did we reorder or did we
No.
decide not to?
No, we didn't.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so unfinished business A. We have staff here that's worked, I can tell, very hard. I have a couple thoughts ahead of time and
Madam Mayor, we might curtail a lot of the discussion because much of the issue of artificial turf is being preempted by the state. It does not involve recreational or public area use. And there is a provision that the state's supposed to establish guidelines under which artificial turf can be installed in single-family neighborhoods. We have to work within the context. Most of what we have worked on for 4 or 5 years to get to someplace would be preempted by the state legislation that has apparently been approved.
I don't necessarily agree with that interpretation, actually,
great.
as I read it. First, the DEP has to come up with standard, which they have not done. I
Right.
mean, that's the first step until, you know, we can do whatever we want until then. And if you read section A, a local government may not adopt or enforce any ordinance, resolution, order, rule, or policy that prohibits or is enforced to prohibit a property owner from installing synthetic turf that complies with the DEP standards pursuant to this section, which apply to single-family residential property. Makes no mention of multifamily, and it doesn't say limit. It says prohibit, and I mean, listen, I've been talking about artificial turf too much in my lifetime, okay? But I don't think that says exactly what that meant. I'll defer to our attorney. I mean, it says prohibit. It doesn't say limit. It doesn't say
Right.
regulate. It doesn't say anything.
and right now, you still have the discretion you've always had. This just got passed. I don't think the governor signed it yet. So it's not the law yet. And as the mayor said, DEP has to now adopt rules. Rulemaking generally takes several months. So, but I think William is correct in the sense of be aware that whatever you pass may be short-lived, may be impacted by this legislation. There may be lawsuits over this legislation that could delay its implementation. So, but you're right, it uses the word prohibit.
It
And
says prohibit.
it's prohibit. So it doesn't say regulate.
Airbnbs, weekend location,
Right.
right? They're very specific. This says prohibit. Now, having said that,
Now, so letter B does say
Go ahead.
regulate. And so A says prohibit, and then B, you can't,
which is
Do anything that
inconsistent with the DOP.
right, which we don't know what that's going to be yet.
Right, and I think that's gonna go more towards the quality, how the thing is, how the turf is made, rather than where you can put it.
My crystal ball does not tell me what DEP is going to do. You know,
Yep.
when they get a hold of it, all bets are off.
If, for example, as I read that, I think if DEP says artificial turf has to have X, right, in order to be okay, and that's how it, then we couldn't say, but you can also have Y. Or if the state says you can have X and Y, we can't say you can only have Y. It's a
Right now,
regulation of what.
right, this has always been a tough area. It just got a little tougher.
First.
So I think you're still free to do what you do, and yet
It may-
realize there's something looming out there that could impact you.
For Right. So having said that, I mean, I think this is a problematic ordinance on so many levels, but just the issue, not the ordinance itself. So, Mr. McFoy, okay, Madam Clerk, will you start keeping time, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And just reserve if you're going to reserve.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we all on the commission have shown recently that we are good at recognizing experts when we see them. And I would therefore anticipate that no one would disagree that the resident subject matter expert is in the room and is speaking. PhD in soil science, master's degree in soil science, soil physics, movement of stuff through soils from two well-respected, internationally known academic institutions. I just want to, from that position of expertise, which is separate from my position as one of the voting members of this board, I want to make it very, very clear that artificial turf is environmentally a clear net negative, despite what one may hear about, well, it's better than putting in lawn and fertilizing it to daylight. Those are false dichotomies. It's not only a choice between fake grass and live grass. There are many other opportunities, as you can consult the Institute for Agricultural Sciences, University of Florida has got various suggestions on that, as do we ourselves here. So don't let us be lured into a false dichotomy that isn't accurate. Also, there are a number of things. I'm not going to repeat all of the reasons that it's environmentally bad. I think we've all heard them. I'm frankly a little surprised after critiques that have been levied in the past that, boy, you folks never come to any decisions. You just keep kicking things down the can. We came to a decision on this a long time ago, and it was clear that there was not support for artificial turf in the town. So I'm a little puzzled that it comes up again, but I just want to be very clear that the science is not ambiguous. The science is very clear. Artificial turf is a net negative on a whole string of different ways. If anybody wants details, I'll be happy to provide them.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Segrich.
I was just going to make a quick suggestion for purpose of discussion, given the new law that is about to be enacted, that we separate out the discussion about residential single family and quickly get through that and then touch on commercial and recreational uses.
Because this does talk about, then that's one of the interesting and confusing things about that, the statute is that it applies, it seems, and correct me if I'm wrong, which only applies to single, this new legislation only applies to single family, correct? Okay.
You're correct.
All right, so do you want to do what Mr. Segrich suggests and continue talking about commercial and multifamily?
Well, could we take care of single family first? Seems to be the shorter of the conversations.
Well, that's the one that's going to be affected by the legislation. So that's the one I would sort of not do until that comes out, but it's up to you guys.
I was just going to suggest that we basically say that it's an allowable ground cover and that it needs to be installed per the state and DEP guidelines.
There's no guidelines,
There will be.
but there aren't any right now. And also, I mean, I think that I don't, one of the issues with any of our ordinances, and when this one, something like this in particular, is enforcement. The ordinance is very particular and very specific about a lot of things. So I think we need to talk about that a little bit. I mean, how do we enforce it? But and they suggest 10% of the impervious area, correct?
That was what was proposed in the ordinance. That number could change, but we are still not allowing or proposing to allow artificial turf where landscaping is required. So that usually it's about 35 to 45% of a site has to be permeable, which then constitutes landscaped area. But in theory, under the ordinance that we have proposed, some proportionate share of the impermeable surface could be covered with artificial turf. If you wanted to allow some portion of the required landscape area to be artificial turf, that's a different conversation.
No,
and
I don't
different
think anyone's
ordinance.
suggesting that. Anybody suggesting we should replace where it should be dirt with turf?
No.
We're talking impervious areas.
I don't think we should consider artificial turf impervious. By definition, it is pervious. So I think we shouldn't have, I'm okay with it where landscaping is required. So, the border around the fence and how many points you need and things like that, it can't be used for that. But besides that, it's not an impervious surface. So I don't think we should be limiting it.
So are you suggesting that somebody could have an entire lawn of artificial turf?
I would say in their backyard, they could do whatever they want. In the front yard, I would limit it to in between the hardscapes. But the new state law might not let us do that.
Well, I until that happens, we need to.
Sure.
Yeah.
Given with the new state law, I would try to make it as simple as possible. Talk about some of the things about maintenance, install to manufacturer's requirements, make it PFAS and lead free.
Right.
But it would be allowable anywhere where landscape is not required.
Is not required.
No, that where it's not required. So you can't use it where you need shrubbery. You can't use it where you need your landscaping by the fence, but anywhere else you could.
But you are suggesting that you could have behind your fence, you could have an entire back lawn of artificial turf.
Yes.
Ms. Malega?
Thank you. I agree. I don't know why, and I even have it highlighted. We are saying impermeable materials include but are not limited to, and we're saying artificial turf. Artificial turf is not impermeable. So I think that that's one thing we have to correct in the language.
What line is that?
It's under definitions.
We didn't have the
Exhibit A.
ordinance read yet.
Well, the ordinance has not been advertised, so you're not taking a vote on the ordinance tonight. You're being asked to give us direction on the
Okay.
concerns you had on the ordinance and bring it back. And based on the performance standards and criteria of how it's installed here, it does not equate the permeability of, raw soil. It really equates to what we consider semi-permeable area. So that's why that definition was provided by our former horticulturists and people that we spoke with. If you are open to a more loose installation where it's just say, and I did this for my dogs and they hate it, but anyway, just stuck artificial turf over raw dirt, it does probably permeate almost equal to regular earth with grass. But when you stabilize it and you put in the compaction and all this other stuff that comes with it on some of the performance criteria for installation, it does not render itself as permeable as at the same perk rate as raw earth or earth with
Grass on it.
living grass.
Well, then, but what one could argue the opposite and say that it is impermeable because the water does saturate through and water doesn't saturate through concrete. So I think that we really need to look at this definition.
So the flow rate that,
Permeable is
the
what
flow
I wanna
rate,
say.
yeah.
the flow rate that we have listed
All right,
within
let's keep
the
our lights
ordinance
going.
is
Mr.
far
Sandwich,
lower than,
You're recognized by the chair.
Hang on, I wasn't done.
Right, right.
and
let's
my
keep-
light was on.
Well, and
So that's the first thing is I think that we as far as I'm concerned, that's needs to be adjusted in the ordinance. The other thing I wanted to bring up is.
and what line was that? I'm sorry.
It's under definitions. On Exhibit A.
Oh.
Chapter 23. Under impermeable impervious surfaces.
Madam Mayor,
I also agree, I'm sorry.
Mr. Brown.
as you guys are kind of going through this as the vice mayor is doing right now, if there are particular lines that you guys are commenting on, if you could just let us know exactly where it is you're talking about, because
Line
It's just-
125.
as Mr. Waters mentioned, what we're trying to do tonight is gather
Right.
notes on whatever you guys are saying. So when we bring this back, because it's going to be 2 readings, we're able to kind of go back and modify whatever it is you guys are asking us to do.
Thank
or
you.
whatever the consensus is.
So
we
it
know
would
to
be
sure.
under line 125. It has it listed as artificial turf is underlined as impermeable impervious surface. My other thoughts, I have to agree with my colleague, Mr. Segrich. I don't care what somebody does in their backyard. If you want to put sand in your backyard, make it a playground, it's your backyard. And I think that we're reaching too far. I am not a fan of it in the front yard, although some people think it makes the yard look better. There's other coverage that you can use, like the little ivy that makes the yard look better. I also would like to have a conversation about why are we not including it in the number one place we need it, which is in the city fields, the city soccer fields, baseball fields. The money we are spending in upkeep of our fields and the trip hazards, the injuries that happen on these fields, the flooding, it doesn't make sense that we would have a language in here that says the city basically can't do it on the athletic fields. I'm not a big fan of it on playgrounds, but for the athletic fields, it just makes sense. You get all around use. You're not closing fields. Right now, we can't even keep our fields open for kids to play on because they're not safe. And especially when we have major torrential downpours and flooding. So I would like personally, my opinion is that we should not be limiting the city from using it, because if there's grants that we can go after for artificial turf and we have this language written, we can't go after those grants. So those are my two thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. McVoy.
Thank you. A couple things. On the pervious, impervious, again, you have soil physics, not just soils, but soil physics. Movement of water through things is exactly the focus of the areas that I studied. It may have a certain rated transmission when it's new. Almost nobody measures it over time. And what happens in Florida over time is you accumulate a little bit of organic matter, not much in this stuff, which is one of the problems with it, but you accumulate it and the perviousness diminishes. And nobody measures that. And nobody is going to propose an enforcement of, well, we're going to go out and do perk tests on your turf grass and see if it's still leaking as much as it should. So I would say, given that we know in general it decreases in permeability, because stuff just does that, especially outside, I would argue leave it as impermeable because that's your safest of where it's likely to end up. Second, we have a whereas in here, and we have a now therefore that says the foregoing whereases clause are ratified and confirmed as being true and correct and made a specific part of this. Well, one of those whereases says the city commission has reviewed the amendments and has determined that it is in the best interest of the public health, safety, and general welfare of the city. Please provide the written evidence to me and to our community of how in any way, shape, or form this is in the best interest of the public health, safety, and general welfare. You can argue that some people want to put it in, and they may want to put it in a lot. That is not saying the same thing that it improves public health, safety, and general welfare. And you have written long-term evidence that it says it does exactly the opposite of that. So I cannot approve the thing that says that we confirm that these are true and correct if you leave that whereas in there. And I do notice that in the whereases, it says what the Planning and Zoning Board has said, it says what the Historic Resources Board has said. It does not say what the Tree Board has said. That seems like a curious omission when the Tree Board was very clear, don't do it. And as far as putting it on public areas, if, Vice Mayor, you're concerned about flooding, what on earth is your argument that putting plastic grass on it is going to decrease flooding? It's going to increase it. That's just, that's known, measured science.
Okay.
So,
We're-
and trip hazards. I live across from a soccer field. I have been involved for months now with the discussion of how are we going to manage this soccer field? Are we going to let kids just go on it and play with it? Or is it going to degrade? Should we put artificial turf on it? on that one, I would say, let's do the experiment and let the kids play on it and see how bad it gets. Trip hazard, I've walked it. No, I'm not buying the trip hazard. Not any more
Okay.
than there
All
would
right.
be on
Thank you
artificial
very much.
grass.
That's your 5. Moving down, Ms. May?
Thank you. Yeah, I went through this and before I realized about the state overreach, I did look at all of the other local governments and I don't think there was any one that banned it outright, which is something that we usually do. We look and see, well, what are our neighbors doing around us?
Oh, please, sorry.
That was not 5
Sorry
minutes.
about No,
The
that
planning
wasn't
and
it.
zoning board also said that it should be considered a pervious material, which I agree with. I'm not a soil scientist, but if you look up the definition of pervious or permeable, it says any surface capable of being penetrated at ground percolation rate of 1 to 3 inches per hour, which is the same as grass. And then it also states that most of the surface is permeable at 25 to like some thousands. I mean, it's a ridiculous rate.
No, fine.
I also do not agree that it should be limited to 10% of the imperviousness that we've talked about that before. That makes no sense to have. You can have all concrete, but only a little bit of turf. That's stupid. So sorry, it is. But so I would agree with no limit in the backyard. I also have highlighted when it says construction of non-city owned athletic fields, I would definitely want to strike that. And the maximum 4-inch wide strips. That seems a little, I don't know, a little specific, I guess. It just seems tiny. I mean, that's like this wide.
That's what they do, those patios.
I
think that's where they come from, where that's coming from. Are you done?
I was speaking.
No, I stopped.
Okay, so I've seen lots of other shapes and sizes of designs with concrete and the turf just walking around, so I think we should allow it on city-owned property, call it pervious, don't limit the backyard. Excuse me, and think that might be it. And the only other question I have, and I don't know if it needs to be put into the ordinance or if it's a discussion, and it's going to be an interesting one, is what do you do with the grandfatheredness? Whatever decision we make, what happens to the people that already have it, don't have it? Well, don't have it, won't matter. But so how do we deal with that? And that might be a different conversation for later today, but we are going to have to figure that out as well. So again, I'm pretty much for citizens being able to decide for themselves if they would like this in their backyard or not.
How do you feel about the front yard? Just because you
No,
didn't touch on it.
You know what? I personally don't care. Honestly, I don't. I mean, it's their property, whatever they want to do with their property. But then, I see both sides of that because I also see that, we're a community and people might have issues with it. I have no problem with the backyard. It'd be interesting to see what the state says. If we did ban the front yard, except for these strips or whatever, it might get overruled anyway. So I would be able to be convinced one way or the other on that. Backyard is free.
Thank you. Mr. Brown's got his light on. We always defer to him.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, Commissioner Boyd, you'd mentioned the tree board. So if you in the backup, but if you in the backup, there was the agenda from the December 17th, 2024 meeting, and it actually under the background of justification, it talks about both the planning and zoning, the HRPP, and the tree board. So it does mention that the tree board unanimously said they were not in favor.
But it's not in the whereas, whereas two of the
Oh.
others are.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Both our Historic Resource Preservation Board and Planning Board serve as our local planning agencies who are required to provide a recommendation on LDR changes under our comprehensive plan and also through state statute. The Tree and Landscape Board only provides a cursory recommendation and is not part of the formal process to make recommendations on the LDR changes. So that's why it's not in the ordinance. And their recommendation has never been in an ordinance since I've been here. But it's always provided in the
It-
staff backup, staff
it-
report.
It's certainly, well, a question for the attorney. Is there any
All
reason
right,
that
Mr.
the tree
McRoy,
boards?
You're out of time actually, right now. Mr. Segrich.
I just wanted to share some research that staff did, and thank you, Jamie, for pulling some of this together. City of Coral Springs, 10 of their 16 soccer fields, football fields now are artificial turf. Palm Beach Gardens, 2 small artificial turf baseball fields. Palm Beach County, 17 new turf fields. Boynton Beach, 1. So, it seems like as far as for recreation in high use areas, this is the way to go. And this is the way the county's going, the state's going, and other towns are going. So I feel for the commercial application and the recreational, especially for our city fields, we hear stories of people constantly breaking in the fence to continue to use it. Normal grass just can't stand up to the amount of usage. And we're closing these fields down and preventing people from using them because it's damaging the fields. This would allow us to open that up, which I think is a good thing for the community. In terms of some of the scientific stuff, artificial turf is definitely permeable. The STC and ASTM put out standards for turf, and they're actually a lot stricter than what we see in this ordinance in terms of flow rate. And it's defined by sport and activity type. So my recommendation, instead of us trying to just pick a number out of the air saying this is the flow rate we have, would be, let's just say that we should adhere to the STC or ASTM compliance for flow rates and minimum standards for the turf for the application that it's being used. And I think that would put us in a safe place because they put a lot of dollars and research into this. Major League Soccer is not going to install artificial turf that isn't going to, work out and drain and be good. And they define things like the base layer and everything. So, there are real agencies we can look to for this kind of expertise. And I think we should lean on that. So I would agree. It needs to be, I look at this ordinance, and I think given the new state law, we basically should start from the new state law that may get signed into by the governor that was passed 147-0, 36-0, probably coming in. I think that we should not necessarily scrap the whole thing, but just kind of key on the major points that we want to see, less than keep going through this, because I think a lot of this isn't going to apply. So, I don't think artificial turf is impervious. So I think got to drop from that definition. I don't think we should limit it in the backyards. In the front yards, I think maybe we do a ratio, just like we do with driveways, 20%, 25%. That gets rid of the whole landscape design. Is it 4-inch strips, 6-inch strip, that kind of thing. And then we point to the Synthetic Turf Council and the ASTM for compliance, PFAS and lead-free products only. Only allow the crumb rubber in sports applications. In all other applications, make it organic materials or the synthetic materials that are environmentally friendly. The flow rate based on, again, the ASTM and the STC ratings for the activity. And then it just has to be properly maintained. The edges, no tears, no fading, and et cetera. And I think, I've got a list of, 9 points. We could keep this very simple and give staff very simple direction to come back and allow this for commercial and recreational use, and then much less in terms of the single family residential.
Thank you. My feeling is I don't want any in the front, period. In the backyard, I honestly just don't like the idea of an entire backyard of artificial turf. I just don't. I think that we need to have a variety of things in our backyards. And there's kind of a balance here between how much control does the government have over how you do with your yard. But I also think that for the will of society in general, we have to think about things sometimes bigger than ourselves. So I would have some sort of half the, some sort of percentage for the backyard and none for the front yard. And because I think the front yard, we're Lake Worth, we're not, perfect town, so I just don't think that's a message that we want to send out, is that. So, So we're pretty much at our end. We've got, and I'm trying to keep as good time as I can. It's hard, some of this conversation. Ms. May, you want one more say?
I just wanted to add something about the backyards. We, first of all, the code isn't really allowed to peek into the backyard anyway. And when I was doing the women's build over on the south side, I was looking into the backyards because I was on the roof. And I saw a lot of the backyards look like junkyards. There was cars, there were washing machines, there was paint cans, garbage all over these backyards. And I've seen it, and as I go on my walks, we've got some, to think that artificial turf is a bigger problem. We can't even get a lady to get bags and bags and bags of garbage off of her front lawn. We literally cannot go there because she has a no trespassing sign. So I hear your argument, but I find it lacking in substance comparative to some of the backyards in this city.
And do we want to go the lower, do we want to meet the lower bar or the higher bar, I guess? So given everything, we are pretty much, Madam Clerk, where are we at with time?
You're 7 minutes and 42 seconds.
Left? Okay. So everybody gets 2 more minutes. Mr. McVoy, you want 2 more minutes?
Yeah, I just want to comment, I'm certainly clear, would not want it in the front yard at all. And I think we should be careful in how we think about the argument for the backyard. The assumption is, hey, let people, a person's home is their castle, their backyard is even more their castle, do what you want in the backyard. Let's go back to the whole idea of why you have government regulations. They're to balance the individual freedoms with the collective benefits. So what are the concerns with artificial grass? Heat island effect, it gets much hotter than any other choice. That affects neighbors. That affects the temperature of the city as a whole. It doesn't matter whether it's in the front yard or the backyard. It affects it the same way. The effect goes outside of the person's individual yard where they ought to be able to do what they want, in theory, as long as it doesn't affect other people. Same thing with runoff. And, it's nice that Commissioner Segrich mentions the standard things. All of that testing, ASTM testing, is brand new. I would ask my colleague, are you willing to adopt pervious standards and have them be tested after 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? I don't think that's practical, and I don't think it's likely to happen, but know that the degree of perviousness goes down over time, guaranteed. It's nice that we've said, well, don't have lead or PFAS in it. Microplastics, I don't know where other people have been, but microplastics are very much on the concern worldwide because you start finding microplastics throughout people's bodies, breast milk, in your brain, other places. The idea of allowing us to put more plastics out in the environment on purpose, where it sits in the sun and definitely degrades and falls apart into little pieces, makes no sense. And it's not any better environmentally in the backyard than in the front. Same thing with protecting the aquifer. All the rainfall that falls on that is not going through organic material.
Thank you, Mr. McVoy.
So there's no
Thank you.
argument that it is better in the backyard than in the front.
I wonder why Mounts Botanical Gardens uses it. Okay, so we have 3. What? Oh, real quick.
I'm not a big fan of it in the front yard. I have to agree. Although when I drive around the city and I see cars parked on front yards and they're just dirt lots, there's that frustration too. But the majority of the people who are parking their cars on their front yard are not going to go out and spend $15,000 to put artificial turf in the front yard. So I honestly, in my heart, feel like if you allow it in the front yard, it's a carve out for those who can afford that, what I would call a luxury, if you don't want to mow your yard and do all that. But I just don't think it's a good look for the town. I think that it would make the city less congruent. If you have artificial turf, the next person has grass, the next person has, and of course we want individuality. I'm just not a big fan of it in the front yard. If we do go down that route, I will say that I have seen where there's pavers and then the thin strips, like really thin, not 4 inches. I don't know where that came from, but like 1.5 inches thin in between the pavers, which looks good. But again, I just don't, I'm not a fan of it in the front yard. So I'm half and half. Like I half agree with the mayor and Commissioner McVoy on certain things, but half agree with Commissioner Segridge and Commissioner May on stay out of people's backyards. Let's focus on doing our sports fields and making sure that we hold whoever's installing these. That's the number one thing. You're not going to go to Home Depot and get a roll of artificial turf and we're not going to come down on you. So it has to be installed the right way with permitting and not just done haphazardly.
And of course, we'd have to figure out a way to let people know that that's a requirement, like with so many other things. Mr. Brown?
Suggestion.
Mhm.
After you go through the public comment, would it be helpful, because I had some things written down, but to just get consensus, or I don't know if you want to do a vote or
Right, right.
something. Front yard,
Right.
backyard, and then actually a lot of things I had written down, Commissioner Segridge actually kind of summarized in his little list.
Mhm.
Would it be possible to go down that list and just get consensus or a vote, or however you guys want to do it for each one of those items? So that now gives staff direction on what to bring back.
Which list?
He went through, I think it was like 8 or 9. It's pretty much covered what I had written down. Where he,
No cheating.
no, but I think that would be beneficial for
Well,
staff.
that was
So
the requirements, what you were reading, right?
I basically took what was in the ordinance, summarized it down to the main sections that were pertinent and
which covered what was
made my
in-
notes on it.
Well, let's see what
Yeah.
that entails. Okay, so let's hear public comment.
Yep.
First up is Ian Blake. Ian Blake? Your name and address, please.
Ian Blake.
Turn the microphone on.
I'll play your game. Ian Blake, 7122 Le Chalet Boulevard, Boynton Beach, Florida. Friend of the court. There's the state ordinance coming down and that preempts a lot of things, and I don't know why you're more upset. I am irate. The person that told me that, I flipped out over because I was irate in just hearing it. But if the choice is between natural grass and artificial turf, there's like a legitimate like pros and cons that are associated with that. You have more options that are available. It does deplete the quality of the soil. It does, reduce the ecosystem of the soil, and bees and all the rest of it. We're killing them. We got to do better. We have to know where our food comes from. There's like multiple cascading effects. And it shouldn't be that big of a deal. And it turns out it winds up being a bigger deal. There's like creeping time. There's all kinds of other alternatives. I understand, I don't want to mow my grass either. I get it. There are a bunch of other options. And if you're limiting to the 2, but we have more options than that. And I like McVoy, and he can be grating on my ears too with the details. There are other ways to get the information, and we can do better. And because we can do better, we probably should do better. And that's my time.
Thank you. Greg, I'm not gonna have, Greg Richter, followed by Ramsey, followed by Peggy Fisher.
Greg Richter, 1202 South Palmway. I guess you know that by now. Real simple. I mean, I read all these two state statutes this morning. It's HB 683 combination with SB 712, which came out of the Senate. And basically, one of the things they did talk about is the backyard. And when you dig into the detail, they really talk like the backyards. You're going to be able to put it in the backyard. So that's kind of moot point. The side yards where you can't be seen, that's good. That's part of it. But the front yard, it's kind of, I really didn't get a clear aspect on that. But the backyard, definitely they were on that. So like this gentleman said here, I hate the fact that the state has taken away another one of our rights to have, self-determination, but those are the facts. Thank you.
Thank you. Ramsey McLeod,
Ramsey McLeod, 24 South C Street. It is unfortunate that it has taken so long for a decision to be made on this issue, but I'm in hopes that through a compromise, a final stance can be made. I understand the arguments for and against the use of this product, and I do believe there needs to be some sort of control of the use and placement of it. Personally, I was hoping Commissioners McVoy and Diaz would have come forward with details regarding how long it takes for a patch of artificial turf to have its soil restored and it have the ability to nurture and help vegetation grow. Unfortunately, that important information has never been shared with us. My concern is the impact this product has on the resale value of the residents. When I bought my house in 2010, there was a lot of stuff in my yard. I am still in the process of trying to get parts of it to grow, and then although the patches have gotten smaller, I have yet to get completely rid of them. So for me, I think artificial turf is a deterrent to purchasing a home, unless that is what you're looking for. I believe most of us enjoy the natural landscaping Florida has to offer and enjoy those views when we can capture them on our own property. However, I do understand why people would prefer the artificial surface for use in special circumstances. So you can choose one extreme or the other, but I think setting aside a designated size requirement, location restriction, and product/installation requirement is the best way to go. Staff has put in an inordinate amount of time in preparing documents, editing the ordinance, and providing usable examples. So the time has come for you all to make an informed decision once and for all. You need to provide guidance to staff regarding current violators and those with liens on their property as well. There also needs to be a time frame in which all properties in violation must come into compliance with the revised ordinance.
thank you. Peggy Fisher?
Peggy Fisher, 508 North A Street. I agree with what Greg and Ramsey both said. But I do think backyards are an issue that needs to be more, if you're gonna say, no, you can't do this, or you can only do it on part of it, then what about having a totally concrete backyard? There you have no permeability. What about having a backyard, as Commissioner May mentioned, covered by cars? Heat effect from that would be pretty high too, I would think, with all that metal baking in the sun, along with refrigerators and dishwashers and everything else. I think it's more about, deal with the front yard, people's backyards. You can't go in there and do anything. And that's detrimental to some of us who live in the city, as the very large RV that sits 5 feet from my fence that's in the backyard and has been there for 2.5 years. Nothing can be done about it. Nothing can be done about the person who's living in it and all the other RVs in our city that are metal, adding to the heat effect, covering up the ground. So, trying to regulate, if you're going to regulate the backyard, then regulate everything applied to the backyard. It's just, you can't cherry pick. You can't say, oh, can't have artificial turf, but we'll let you have everything else. You can put 6 cars back there. You can put a RV or 2 to make some income. You can do it. You got to be covering everything. And this isn't an HOA. This is a city, not an HOA. And you also need to remember that. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do you have any public comments? Yes.
I do, Madam Mayor.
Or you did.
The first one is from Brian Luongo at 1327 North Palmway. Good evening, Commissioners. As we are all aware, several residents have installed artificial turf under very vague and contradictory city codes. I want to steer the conversation away from aesthetics. Since that is a very personal opinion, I would like to focus my comment on 2 issues. Number 1, environmental. No solution is environmentally perfect. My decision to install artificial turf was heavily weighted by the environmental impact I could make. My turf drains 30 inches of water per hour, contributing to no storm water runoff. My turf needs no watering, reducing my water needs by 90%. Both reduce the strain on city infrastructure. It also eliminates the need for chemicals and pesticides, which find their way into our groundwater and waterways. This causes toxic algae blooms in our intercoastal waters and other water sources. It also eliminates any greenhouse gases emitted from lawnmowers. Number 2, grandfathering. If the city commission chooses to alter the ordinances, then it should grandfather all existing installations. Only when modification is needed should you be required to bring it up to current code. This is similar to other building requirements. In summary, I believe that the city should allow the use of artificial turf. Thank you for your time. The next comment I have is from Grant Kark at 1116 North East Street. As a golf course superintendent and a Florida licensed pesticide applicator, I strongly support allowing artificial turf in some capacity within our city, specifically as a compromise in front yards only. Lawn pesticide runoff poses a serious and ongoing threat to aquatic ecosystems and the quality of our everyday water supply. Unlike licensed professionals in turf management, homeowners can purchase pesticides from local hardware stores and apply them without any oversight. This lack of regulation increases the risk of over-application and chemical runoff into stormwater systems, contributing to environmental harm. Allowing artificial turf in front yards would not only help reduce pesticide use and runoff, but it could also enhance the visual appeal of our neighborhoods. Many homeowners struggle to maintain healthy front lawns, especially in areas with poor soil, shade, or watering restrictions. Artificial turf offers a low-maintenance, clean and green alternative that helps beautify the city while protecting our natural resources. I urge the city to consider this reasonable middle ground, permitting artificial turf in front yards as a way to support environmental responsibility, uphold aesthetic standards, and foster positive cooperation with residents. The next comment I have is from Brittany Merriweather at 219 North L Street. We should be prioritizing the environment and public health by not permitting artificial turf in our city. The science is clear. Artificial turf poses significant environmental and health risks. It contributes to the release of microplastics, which are forever chemicals that contaminate our waterways, harming both ecosystems and potentially human health. The argument that homeowners should be allowed to do whatever they want on their property falls apart when those actions harm others. If I want to play my music super loud at 2 a.m., everyone would be very upset and the police would be called. And I would be asked to turn down my music. Why? Because it negatively affects my neighbors. The same can be said about the turf. It sheds microplastics that enter our stormwater systems and groundwater. It also contributes to urban flooding by preventing water infiltration and increases local temperatures due to its heat-retaining surface, which exacerbates the urban heat index. It is not okay for a few residents to make choices that jeopardize our shared environment and public health. Turf should be banned in all outdoor spaces, plain and simple. The next comment that I have is from Diane Brown, North NF Street. Please continue to prohibit artificial turf or plastic grass. Plastic grass is not Florida-friendly landscape. It does not provide a wildlife habitat. It does not filter groundwater, and the ground under it is void of life. Plastic grass generates more stormwater runoff as the soil below it is compacted, so little water is absorbed. It still uses water to wash it and keep it clean. Plastic grass has limited lifespan, and although the manufacturers claim it is recyclable, the multi-layers make this very hard. It will just be more plastic filling our landfills. It has dangerous chemicals and forever chemicals that never go away. Just another plastic invading our environment, making more microplastic to enter our environment and our bodies. Please continue to prohibit on the prohibition on artificial glass be part of the solution, not adding to problems of damage to our environment. The next comment that I have is from Lee Simmons, North Palmway. I strongly support planting more trees in Lake Worth Beach, both in Bryant Park and throughout the city. There are few things more important than vibrant green trees and canopy cover. I do not support artificial turf. Spend millions on trees. Trees are non-controversial and benefit all citizens in our city. Keep Lake Worth green. The next comment that I have is from Andrew Thomas Gaines, South Palmway. Good evening, City of Lake Worth Beach Commission. I am an oncologist for a veteran hospital. Oncologist is a medical doctor for patients who have cancer. I see a lot of cancer patients and it never goes down. It seems with every passing year, there are more and more cancer patients that there are not enough oncologists going around. As you may know, there is a tragic and overburdened medical system, that there is not enough money to pay for every patient, that many medical insurances deny claims, even though it may be medically necessary for a patient. I am begging and pleading the City of Lake Worth Beach to vote no for artificial turf ordinance. I realize that homeowners would like to have freedom to do whatever they want for their property, but it is a very foolish choice to install artificial turf on any city, residential, or commercial business. Hospitals, clinics, and private medical practices will be inundated with cancer patients, where many will be denied necessary medical treatments by their medical insurance or have to pay out of pocket. To prevent this, we need more city, state, and federal government officials to pass laws that will not make more Americans sick. Please vote no to artificial turf. The next comment that I have is from Martin Jose Jimenez Souza at 722 Northeast Street. Good evening, commissioners. I am an environmental engineering student at Florida International University working on my master's degree. I am against the City of Lake Worth Beach having the artificial turf. This is an extremely toxic ordinance for the environment. I am really shocked any commissioner would approve this. Mimi May came to our district proclaiming that homeowners should be able to do whatever they want to do to their property. This is a red flag to me as a city commissioner. If residents could do whatever they wanted, then they would allow toxic chemicals, dangerous wild animals, and illegal plants, etc. The Tree Board and the University of Florida, IFAS, are against artificial turf. This new ordinance would contribute to global warming by absorbing more radiation than living grass. This new ordinance would reduce the amount of rainfall that enters the soil. This new ordinance would introduce microplastics into the environment. Please don't be brainless by approving this new ordinance of accepting artificial turf anywhere. Children and athletes are especially vulnerable to health risks of artificial turf. They can breathe in and absorb through the skin or ingest turf dust, microplastics, and toxic chemicals. The next comment that I have is from Daniel Joseph Fisher, 115 Southwest 13th Street, Boynton Beach. Hello, Mayor, City Commissioners, City Manager, and City staff. Thank you for the work you have done to improve Lake Worth Beach. However, work never seems done. Please allow me to explain about artificial turf. What is put on the field does not stay on the field. Synthetic turf breaks down into smaller pieces, including microplastics less than 5 millimeters. They are carried long distances by the wind, leach into water systems, storm drains, and contaminate the soil. Barcelona, Spain found that artificial grass fibers accounted for 15% of plastic pieces larger than 5 meters within 1 kilometer from the shore. Additionally, synthetic turf only lasts about 8 to 10 years. According to the Synthetic Turf Council, the average athletic field uses 400,000 pounds of infill and 40,000 pounds of artificial turf carpet. There is no known way to recycle artificial turf, so this product is piling up, buried or burned, contaminating the environment. Artificial turf contains hundreds of harmful chemicals like lead, heavy metals, benzene, arsenic, volatile organic compounds, PFAS, and phthalates, some of which are cancer-causing carcinogens, neurotoxins, and/or endocrine disruptors. Even new safer alternatives for turf and field contain carcinogens and neurotoxins, e.g. lead and PAS. Unfortunately, there are gaps in what we know about synthetic turf because manufacturers are not required by law to reveal all of the chemicals used. Vote no to artificial turf. Also, I am for charging for parking in the downtown area. Go to Delray or City Place or West Palm Beach where they charge for parking and you will see businesses are busy and active. The next one that I have is from Jenny Powell, 224 North Palmway. Plastic grass can reach temperatures similar to asphalt and heat up surrounding areas, including your home. It does not break down, waste like dog poop, bird droppings, or leaves, and requires, I apologize. Give me just a second.
Take a breath.
Sorry, my mouth got a little dry.
Yeah.
I'll start over. Jenny Powell, 224 North Palmway. Plastic grass can receive temperatures similar to asphalt and heat up surrounding areas, including your home. It doesn't break down waste like dog poop, bird droppings, or leaves, and requires regular cleaning, irrigation, sweeping, and vacuuming. It is more abrasive to the skin and kills everything underneath, displacing real plants that absorb carbon dioxide. Due to environmental and safety concerns, California law no longer considers plastic grass an acceptable drought-tolerant landscaping option. It is also not deemed Florida friendly by the University of Florida Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences. It is difficult to recycle and can deteriorate, releasing plastic materials into the environment, potentially affecting areas like Lake Worth Lagoon. Several people on Reddit cautioned against it due to the smell. Prohibiting plastic grass is no different from other local lawn aimed at maintaining property values and neighborhood aesthetics, such as garbage and bulk waste disposal and permit requirements for doing work on your home. Reversing the ban would create more work for the Sustainability Department and code enforcement, as improper installations with or without permits are likely. Residents can maintain active yards without grass, real or artificial. I'd be happy to share examples, including my own yard. 2 sets of commissioners over nearly 5 years have voted to keep artificial turf prohibited. It is a smart decision considering the environmental health and community impacts. The next one is Kevin Green, 211 North D Street. Greetings, Mayor, staff, Jamie Brown, and commissioners. I am a 20-year-old student at Palm Beach State College. I am studying to be a landscape designer. I read the ordinance for artificial turf, also known as a faux lawn, amongst the landscape designers. Granted, in landscape design, this would be welcomed to give a more aesthetic look to a single-family home, athletic field, backyard, or any park, but their environmental effects are detrimental. Artificial turf contains hundreds of harmful chemicals like lead, heavy metals, benzene, arsenic, volatile organic compounds, PFAS, and phthalates, some of which are cancer-causing carcinogens, neurotoxins, and/or endocrine disruptors. Even new safer alternatives for the turf infield contain carcinogens and neurotoxins, e.g. lead and PAHs. Unfortunately, there are gaps in what we know about synthetic turf because manufacturers are not required by law to reveal all of the chemicals used. The grass blades and backing in synthetic turf is made with the use of PFAS, known as forever chemicals. PFAS chemicals are endocrine hormone disruptors and linked to decreased sperm count, as well as increased rates of infertility, risk of cancer, immune disorders, and more. Some manufacturers claim that their artificial turf is now PFAS free, but this has not been supported by research. Children and athletes are most vulnerable as they play on these surfaces, breathe in, absorb through the skin, and even ingest turf dust, microplastics, and corresponding toxic chemicals. This is especially worrisome. That's 2 minutes for that one. The next one is Jonas Reed, 1325 North N Street. This proposed ordinance does very little to address the so-called turf issue. Artificial turf is already classified as an impervious surface under existing code. Rather than providing clarity or practical improvements, this ordinance simply adds another layer of restriction on top of rules that are already in place. It is disappointing to see that community input appears to have been disregarded in the drafting of this ordinance. The result is a proposal that declaims existing regulations instead of offering meaningful or constructive changes. I urge you to vote against the bill and request that staff return with a revised ordinance that genuinely addresses new issues rather than reiterating existing code. The next comment is from Kyle Green Buttonwood, 707 Sunset Drive. Greetings to everyone. Let me introduce myself. I am a certified horticulturalist by the American Society for Horticultural Science, ASHS. We are responsible for taking care of Mother Earth. It is a very delicate and sensitive. If chemicals are constantly penetrating the aqueduct, the city will have a lot of problems and it will cost millions. Do not allow artificial turf. There are alternatives to artificial grass that are not as dangerous for the ground, air, and intellects, and water. Please vote no to this ordinance, and the would-be public, city officials, and renters consider alternatives. The best alternative to artificial grass depends on your climate and desired aesthetic, but generally planting a mix of native, low-maintenance ground covers like clover, moss, and shady areas, or a wildflower meadow is considered a more sustainable and environmentally friendly option, offering a natural look while still requiring minimal upkeep compared to traditional grass. The next one that I have is for Catherine Nolan, 222 North Palmway. Dear Mayor and Commissioners, I support the restriction of artificial turf in street-facing gardens and suggest considering a grandfather clause for installations that have already been made. Taking into account the cost and fairness of having to remove and reinstall landscaping. In the spirit of community engagement and support, I am wondering if the City Commission would consider hosting workshops on Florida native gardening with a focus on conservation. Thank you for your consideration. The next one that I have is Sam Smith, 109 North Palmway. Good evening. I have been disappointed that the city has flip-flopped multiple times on the issue of AstroTurf. First, there was nothing in the ordinance that banned AstroTurf, and many people put it in at great expense. Then many of those residents were told AstroTurf is not allowed, yet there was nothing in the city ordinances that spoke to it being banned. And indeed, many large development plans were approved by the city with AstroTurf being included in those plans. But regular residents were fined for doing the same. Many residents were and are being fined for AstroTurf, and others lost significant sums of money by having to rip out expensive AstroTurf and then put in grass, which does not grow well. Then the city staff came back years later and said, oops, you can have AstroTurf. It just counts towards impervious materials, etc. What a complete mess, and a mess 100% created by the city. Modern AstroTurf is a great pervious material that can be utilized as an appropriate substitute for grass. Grass in Florida is very difficult to grow. It requires large amounts of water and chemicals, and even then, it does not do well. Many people instead suggest use these living ground cover vines instead of grass. Okay, great suggestion for some, like retired people with no small children and no pets, but many residents have children and pets and need a surface that works for play, and AstroTurf is a great option. I urge the city to approve AstroTurf for play areas, backyards, pool areas, driveway strips, etc. Furthermore, all residents who were improperly coded for having AstroTurf should have all fines waived, and the city should be liable to those residents who ripped out AstroTurf when the city was 100% wrong. That ordinances did not allow it. The next comment that I have is from Catherine Kohlmeyer, 503 First Avenue South. There are already many well-informed, salient comments arguing against allowing the use of plastic grass. To address the assertions that the use of plastic grass reduces fertilizer and pesticide use, I would suggest intense effort be made to educate Lake Worth Beach residents in the use of ground covers that do better in Florida conditions than grass. Learning to use plants that can survive here without toxic chemicals nor much watering will benefit everyone, including the environmental option, which we are all absolutely depend. Solving the problem of the use of toxic chemicals with an even worse alternative is not a solution at all. The next comment that I have is for Christina Reed, 1325 North N Street. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Commissioners, staff, and residents. I support limited use of artificial turf. I am not asking for unlimited usage. I am asking to use this material for a small pesticide-free play area for my six-year-old with severe allergies to local insects and weeds. If the claim is IFAS doesn't want us to use it, I'd like to call out that IFAS and Florida-friendly landscaping sources use terms like limited use when it comes to artificial turf. Even Mounts Botanical Garden, supported by IFAS and ran by master gardeners, has artificial turf on its grounds. If the argument is artificial turf isn't IFAS approved or Florida-friendly landscaping, then can we assume that means the commission will ban all non-Florida friendly plants and residents and city must adhere to all their landscaping guidelines? Or are you just choosing based on personal preference? If the claim is that it contains microplastics and those are harmful, then what are the next steps the city will be taking to remove these harmful substances? Obviously, artificial turf isn't the only thing contributing to microplastics. Will we be banning single-use plastic, water bottles, body scrubs with plastic beads, weed screens? Banning only artificial turf is biased, hypocritical, and unfair unless it is accompanied by a complete overhaul of our landscape code and beyond to follow every Florida-friendly guideline and eliminate every source of microplastics. Please allow for the limited usage of artificial turf in Lake Worth Beach. The next comment that I have is for, Giovanna Dominguez Timor, 301 8th Avenue North. Honorable Commission, the issue of plastic grass in any amount has been diligently studied by your tree board for many years. In the spring of 2023, while I was still on the board, we were each tasked with conducting research and making proposals for alternative natural turf options to turf grass for our residents. Given the fact that our environment is perfect for many forms of natural ground covers, which are not only beautiful, but that bring in pollinators and are great underfoot for children to play on, and are drought resistant, in addition to serving all manner of life above and below ground by enriching the soil and preventing erosion. Birds, butterflies, moths, dragonflies, and other critters survive and thrive on our living turf and ground covers, which also filter the water while beautifying our yards. Each of us members conducted research and presented our findings. We then voted to ban artificial grass in our city. Resistance to living turf over plastic grass, which provides absolutely no benefit to life on Earth and instead causes harm to the environment in every possible way is in direct conflict with science. This is why your advisory board, which has always been made up of a combination of people who have volunteered because of expertise or willingness to further their education and knowledge in order to help their neighbors and our little city, is so important. Cities that care about life and the environment ban this material in any amount, which is exactly what your board did. And yet this item is still unsettled because there are always human beings who resist truth, logic, and science-based facts. That's the end of that comment. That is the end of all of the comments that I have on this item, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. We have one more from Richard Stowe here.
Good evening. My name is Richard Stowe. I reside at 414 North Federal Highway. I served as chair of the tree board for about 6 years. I started, or 9 years altogether, started in May of 2013. I knew nothing about natives, invasives, or anything in Florida, maybe in other states, but the artificial turf, I did know that that was a bad thing prior to coming to Lake Worth. New Haven, a group out of New Haven, Yale, created a nonprofit, EHHI, and they extensively researched the negative impacts of crumb rubber on humans playing sports. And I suggest, instead of passing this ordinance, I have a substitute, and that is for the city commission to direct the tree and landscape board to educate about why to use, or why to use, like native ground covers like sunshine mimosa, and there's different ground covers that provide different results and design, address desires, and also to educate what not to plant. Like go away from the just regular grassy yard and incorporate these natives, and to educate the public as to the reasons why artificial turf has health and ecological impacts. And then we can just, I think at that point, and then there's one other thing, and that is people did invest in these properties. I think we need incentives, like financial or help, whatever.
Thank you, that's time.
Native ground covers to help them do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have now got to give some direction to staff. Can we agree on front yards, no artificials? Okay, because there's gonna be some compromising going on here, obviously. Can we agree on front yards having no artificial turf? Let's start with, I think would be the
Agreed.
easy one.
Agreed.
Mr. Segbridge, yes or no? Yeah, I mean, front yards, no, would you agree with no? You want artificial turf in front yards and backyards?
Yes, but
No.
limitation.
Such as?
So with the front yard. With the front yard, keep in mind, you also have your landscape requirements. So you have 50% of your landscape points that need to be in the front yard. Most people have a driveway. So it's not going to be total coverage of the front yard. It's not like there's just going to be a bare front yard that just consists of artificial turf. So it's not complete coverage. I think we should have some sort of allowance. I think the majority of us up here are leaning towards no. So it's just a compromise where maybe we say 25% can be artificial turf, or 15% can be artificial turf. So we don't have to get into the whole design and, regulate, is it 4 inches, is it 6 inches, and so forth. But I think we have to have some allowance for it within the front yard in single family residential. And then see where it goes with what the state does and the DEP.
Thank you. Ms. May, where are you at with that?
Torn. When we talk about the limitations, are we just just in general, 25% or 15% of the entire front property line part?
Yeah, but you would also you have to adhere to the regular landscape code, which, 50% of your landscape points have to be in the front yard. So there's going to have to be other landscaping beside the turf. So
Right.
just give some small percentage to them. If they want to use it in between pavers and what have you, great. If they want to create a little patch because it's completely shaded and it can't grow anything, I'm fine with that. The other aspect of it that would help is right now in our code, we say that the area has to be covered by an allowable or acceptable ground cover, I believe is the term, yet we don't define that list. So as part of this, I hope we give direction to staff to actually define that list when we come out of this, because that's been the cause of a lot of fights and confusion for people. But I would be in favor of just a percentage. That way we're not in the design business. And it's pretty easy or easier, I would think. Obviously, Mr. Waters could weigh in, easier for staff to kind of view that and approve or disapprove based on that.
Thank you.
Can we ask Mr. Waters?
Can I keep going? Yeah, I'm gonna.
Okay.
I mean, a list. I mean, the problem with lists are if you have a list, is it inclusive or not? If you don't.
No, I don't mean about the list. I mean, what would it look like if you made a, like a 20% of the front yard could be? Like, what would that look like?
Well, right now, I believe that 50% of the front yard has to be landscaped in some fashion or more. The percentage that I'm hearing from Commissioner Cedric is that 25% of the whole front yard, or 15 to 25% of the area that has to be landscaped. Either way is a quantifiable number. And we do have a list of suggested ground covers. And I've been trying for years to get ground cover comes in different sizes, 1 gallon size, 2 gallon size, 3 gallon size. Try to get a matrix developed so that people could be given, if you choose a 3 gallon size, let's say potato vine or whatever that, or whatever ground cover might be, they have to be planted on a certain on center. And then you would know that within 6 months you'd have ground cover. I don't know, and I'm not enough of a landscape expert to know why that quantifiable definition is so difficult to provide, but it does appear to be so. We do have some landscape consultants now through Chenmore who are taking over now that Mr. McGrew isn't with us anymore. And hopefully if you get to a consensus of some direction, we can come up with a list of acceptable ground covers and how they should be planted based on what size and how and what their on center place it would be. So it would be like almost okay, maybe I'm hungry. It will be relatively easy for code compliance and others to ascertain whether it's in compliance or not.
And honestly, it doesn't matter what I think about the front yard because it's going to be 3 to 2.
Yeah, I mean, if you make a list and it has the top 15, 20 things, but there's this vine that Amelia's has that it's not on the list, what do you do?
Well, we have in over time, because we have an inclusionary code, which unless it's allowed, it's prohibited. We have created some allowances that of defining substantially similar.
Okay.
So if there's a new hybrid plant that comes out that is substantially similar to a creeping jasmine, which is a really good ground cover that has a little flower on it, then we can make that decision. And it would open the door for, because we cannot list, this is why we don't do this, an exhaustive list of everything that's permitted, because that's just, crazy. And on the same side, we don't list everything that's prohibited because that could be exhaustively long as well.
Right.
So we're trying. So I think we can come up with sort of a substantially similar approach after coming up with a list of what grows. I was just doing some little research. There's a new grass on Instagram that you plant and it gets really beautiful and it's drought tolerant, it doesn't grow tall, and it's like zoysia grass. And I'm like, this sounds fabulous. I wonder if it works.
Let's try
And
it.
I'm about to go in there and buy some and just sprinkle it and see if it grows, because I cannot grow grass at all at my yard. So I understand the challenge of
I
something
have
South Florida have.
my front yard's all shade.
Yeah.
Bromeliads. That's my answer.
My dogs like eating those. And so that's not a good thing.
That's not good. So, okay. So let's keep going. Yeah, 3 of us are saying
No.
No in the front yard. So we're going there. We've got, let's go to the backyard. Now, I mean, I would like to say, I mean, personally, I would like to say no, no turf at all, just aesthetically, whatever. And I know that's not going to happen. But I also feel like some of the comments that are made and some of the thoughts that I've already said is, it's more, it's not just about what I want in my backyard. It's how are we sustaining the nature? How are we sustaining flowers and pollinators and things like that? So I would like a compromise in the backyard. And are we considering it? Did we decide we're going to just consider it permeable? Is that where we're going?
Well, I think your consensus was that we would remove the artificial turf from the impermeable
Okay.
materials list.
Okay.
And then you go into, well, your backyard is various sizes depending on how your property's developed.
Mhm.
We do have definitive amounts of air that can be impermeable, and we have a definitive amount of air that can be permeable. I think, in the backyard, you're going to have to give us some direction and maybe just do a crapshoot. And 50% of the backyard, regardless of how big the backyard is. Now, we do have properties that don't have backyards.
Well, there you go. No,
Yeah.
and here's the other thing, and I understand the arguments against artificial turf, but it is also true that there are yards full of cars and old dishwashers, and if I wanted to spray my yard with Roundup every week, I could do that. So, I mean, that's, kind of a problem there. So, in terms, I don't like the idea of a yard of artificial turf. I don't.
Can we just say one thing though? Just because we allow it doesn't mean that everyone
No, I
in the
understand.
city
Of
is going to
course
go do it. Like, I'm not putting it in my
Right.
backyard,
No,
but
of
I
course.
would like to allow people the ability to do so. That's all I'm saying. But I don't think it's like, just because you can doesn't mean you're going to.
No, I totally understand that.
Expensive process.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's like $40 a square foot installed for good stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's majority of our residents can't afford this anyway.
How do we feel about the, having it installed and letting people know that they have to get a permit, letting people know that there's certain standards that they have to meet? Are we okay with that? Okay.
100%.
Okay. Just want to clarify everything. A green rug, just throw it
Shag-
down.
Shag rug.
A green shag rug from the 70s.
World Thrift Yard.
What's
Company.
this list of,
Are we going to go back to the backyard? You want
well,
to do the vote?
I kind of, let's find out about the backyard. And this is hard for me because I really, my practical German side is saying we can't enforce this pretty much anyway. I mean, it's right.
Nope.
Not in the backyard.
It's tough to get into the backyard. So
I mean,
how-
if there's a fence, if there's no fence and you can see it, then it's not a
That's
The
problem.
not-
backyard will come up as questions with mixed use properties and properties that are held out for residential rental because they do have to have a use and occupancy inspection.
They have to what?
Use and occupancy inspections.
Right, and
which
that's
mean-
outside.
It's outside usually, and it's the whole outside property. But I will caution that we're looking at, there seems to be some questions coming up about whether we can actually do that anymore to the extent that we have in the past. I'll leave it at that because we're trying to put together a whole presentation to you all of all the scary things coming that you're going to have to sort of accept.
Yeah, they've been very active up in Tallahassee this year.
Yes, they have.
They dropped the CRA and they dropped
Sovereign immunity.
sovereign immunity. So those were two things. So, okay. So in terms of the backyard, I mean, depending on the vote, I mean, I hate it that we're saying you can have a backyard full of artificial turf. I hate it. But I also agree that not everybody's going to do it. And if they're going to do it, they're not going to do the whole yard. So, Ms. Malega, where are you at with backyard?
It's people's backyards. I don't think if 10% of our residents do it. So I feel that the sky's not falling on this, but the people who want it, if you've got kids, if you've got dogs, if that's what you want to do and it's your backyard and you are going to pull a permit and do it the right way, I'm all for it.
Okay. And I know Mr. McBoyd disagrees with that.
I'd like to do remodeling of boats in my backyard, and it's my backyard, and I think I should be able to do what I want in it. And too bad that it is an annoying noise for my neighbors. Too bad that it's an annoying smell for my neighbors if I'm using epoxy. I don't follow the logic that is being presented here, that all of a sudden we allow people to do whatever they want. And then we make the argument that, well, you know, it's only McVoy that's going to work on boats in his backyard and maybe a few other people. So why don't we go ahead and allow it? That our thinking here is very weak, I would say. So I'm with the mayor on, I just don't think it's a good idea. And the negatives to the environment don't care whether it's in the front yard or the backyard. They are negatives wherever the stuff is. So I'm in it at 0.
And I'm against my desire. I'm gonna go with the, you can do in the backyard with what you want to do in the backyard. I don't like it. For the record, I'm gonna, if I vote yes for it, it's still gonna be like with gritted teeth. But there are, again, to me, it's the practical application of how do we control, how do we enforce? We have so many ordinances that we can't enforce now. And they're getting bigger by the day. So I would reluctantly go with, as a compromise, in the front yard, none, and in the backyard. I would like to say 50% of your backyard, but again, that's getting into measuring and stuff. If with permits, with, you know, the standards that are established, I hate it, but I would compromise at that.
So what percentage are you in at? 100% in the backyard?
I don't like it, but
50%?
it's,
It doesn't matter what you like.
all right,
What
we're not gonna-
percentage are you agreeing on?
I'm agreeing with
100%.
Yes.
Okay, just so we're clear.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like it, but again, it's 50%, it's 25%. Who's going to go out there with a tape measure?
We
So-
have all sorts
all
of
right.
rules in backyards of
All
setbacks
right,
and
let's- I'm
this
not
and that and the
gonna-
other.
We're not arguing. So I would reluctantly go ahead with the backyard and with nothing in the front yard. Jamie's lights on.
Just to be clear, because we had talked about the definition of artificial turf now not being classified as impervious. There is a set ratio that's allowable in the backyard with pervious to impervious. So without even talking about percentage, if
We have
The
an
property.
impervious limit that
Yep.
governs the entire property,
Property, right,
Correct.
not just. the
which
back.
also includes the impervious footprint of a building.
yes,
Then we have the permeable area that's allowed on a lot. I was going to let them finish, but there are some landscape requirements in the back. And I believe Commissioner Cedric was open to, and correct me if I'm wrong in what I heard, that we could allow this artificial turf in the backyard up to the point that it doesn't impinge upon the landscape area that's required.
and that's what I was getting at.
Okay,
Because we're
Some
talking,
we
we're
require
talking
hedges, we
percentages.
require screening, we require,
Right.
different things where landscape is that.
so we're not throwing out the landscape code, we're just allowing the turf where
So
grass.
it
would-
may be difficult to have a completely 100%
Mhm.
artificial turf backyard.
Anyway.
Anyway,
Okay.
there are a few that might pull it off, but I don't think most of them couldn't.
And you're not suggesting that we throw out the landscape code?
Not yet, no. Yeah, no, I'm in agreement with what Mr. Waters said.
All right, so I think that's, again, I think that's kind of a good
Just-
place to kick off with.
Okay, I
Just
just
one-
wanted to make sure,
Yeah,
because
no,
we were
I
talking
agree.
percentages, so I just
Right.
wanted to make sure that
Just one thing, right now, it's been interpreted as artificial turf is not an acceptable ground cover.
Well, they're gonna fix that.
But so in the backyard, it would have to be an acceptable
They're
ground
gonna
cover.
Fix that. That's,
I don't think we have any rules about ground cover in the
Acceptable,
backyard necessarily.
right.
I'll check that. I may be wrong because I don't work I know we have it in the front yard, has to be ground cover.
Yeah.
Some of the dual frontage lots that are like on Palmway and Lakeside and other ones, that one we're going to probably have to create some kind of waiver process because technically they have 2 front yards and the 2 front yards have to have a certain amount of
Yeah.
ground cover, blah, 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 blah. But there is an area on dual fronted lot that actually is considered backyard. Getting lost in the weeds, I'm sorry.
thank you.
Can't even,
Okay,
can't
all
even
right.
see you.
right.
I wish
Okay,
you'd see
so
me.
he's coming out of the cornfield. All right, so do we have direction? No restriction, no astroturf or whatever it is in front yards. Not throwing out the lane, keeping the landscaping requirements, but allowing
Up to the
artificial
extent
turf
allowed.
up to the extent allowed
So you
with a
can't put it in
landscaping.
your
code.
driveway? Decorative in the
Right.
driveway?
Mr. Segrich, real quick. Moving
I was going to
along.
ask the same that Miss May said. So no in the front yard definitely means not even in between pavers. not even
Well,
the
they have the in-between paver thing, that's fine. I mean, just,
Well, Sarah's shaking her head.
just if, in a driveway. in the
Okay, so
driveway.
then that means we're gonna go back to basically what staff recommended. Artificial turf shall be prohibited in front yards except for limited use as decorative grid design with maximum 4-inch wide strips used in conjunction with approved pavement materials for patio. So we're just gonna keep number 2.
I have no problem with that.
Does that give more direction? Okay.
What about the, yeah,
Well, but
I'm okay with that. And the side yard area is not visible from the right of way. That's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah, I'm okay with number 2.
so that would be just nothing more than a 4-inch strip in between paver bricks or to do.
Or a real.
When you
Maximum.
bring it back, I'm sure we're gonna have a different number than 4, but we'll. go-
Okay,
we're gonna
we'll
bring it
try.
back.
We'll bring it
random.
back at 4.
4 is random.
It came from somewhere and I'm trying to find out where it came from.
A lot of this is word for word from West Palm.
You cut and paste. Works half the time. Okay, so is the horse dead enough yet?
No,
I think we've got Mr. Brown. You look perplexed.
Well, I just want to make sure also, on, line, because that's 189. The installation, maintenance and repair. I just want to make sure everyone is okay with the language in that.
Line 1.
Oh, E, going all the way down?
Correct, E.
yeah.
Where are you?
This would be line
E.
189. Yeah, it just kind of goes to the installation, maintenance, repair, because it
Right.
didn't seem like anyone had any issue with that language that I've heard.
Right.
So, you do.
But we didn't talk about city fields.
I was actually going to wait until you guys finished talking about the residential portion
apologize.
before I.
All right, so you want to bring up City Fields?
Yeah.
I had issue with one.
I'm sorry?
I had issue with one again.
Well, we're sort of,
Turn your mic on. Can't hear you.
what?
I think that we're going way too far into the weeds. I think we should just say that it has to be professionally installed according to manufacturer guidelines.
Eh.
And it's
What-
gonna
what-
wear out. We've got, I mean, if it wears out, we've got to be able to have.
No, I understand wear and tear and the look and feel, but we're getting into the actual installation of artificial turf here. And I just don't think we need to put that into our code.
It is cut. That part is all
Well,
copy. and
may I
pasted.
explain why that was there? Because we can't do a product specific code. And the argument that was bounced around in all the years that I've been here is the quality of artificial turf. And some is so much better than others, and others,
Right.
have just go out and roll it across your front yard. Well, if we don't have some kind of performance standard and we can look at something different, an alternative from 189, and that's probably going to be what's coming from the DEP for the state, is that we have no control over the quality. But if the performance standard for its installation is there, and you look at the material itself and it has manufactured, some of them are just not going to have this type of application criteria as part of its installation. So there may be another way to get at this, but and there's a performance criteria that we, the parts per million and the recyclability and all other stuff, but it doesn't really get into necessarily how it's installed. And you can do a really good job of installation. You can do a really bad job.
And we are calling for permits. So I mean, there's
Yes.
something for the people.
Right,
to
but
look at
but a
what's-
permit is inspected based on our criteria or
That's what I'm
criterion.
saying. So if
And
we
so
have
we
the
need
criteria,
something to go by
right,
in terms of a quality installation. I can tell you that nobody on my staff, unless there's a little book that says this is what I'm looking for,
Right.
can go out and say that was an expert job of artificial turf installation.
yeah, I mean, you can't throw out all the regulations, Mr. Segrich. I know you're dying to do that, but we can't throw everything out. So I would vote to keep that stuff in. Ms. Malega?
And I happen to agree. I want more rules on this, especially because you can literally go to Home Depot or Lowe's
Yep.
and get it off of a roll and
Yeah.
cut it and then just go home and throw it down.
Yep.
There is no manufacturer's installation. It's not like when you buy the box from IKEA and you get 75,000 screws that you don't know what to do with. Artificial turf, you can literally just buy by the roll.
Right.
So I like having more rules and making sure that it is installed correctly, and that it is inspected and we have permits pulled. I do want to support Commissioner McVoy's concern, just real quick, on the ordinance and the whereas line from 37 to 39. And I think that should be completely stricken out of the ordinance when it comes forward, because it doesn't make sense. This isn't a health, safety. We're not doing this for those reasons or the general welfare. And that might have been a copy and paste thing from a different ordinance, but I would like to support taking 37 to 39 out of the ordinance.
The and I
I think-
may be corrected by the attorney, the legislative authority for you to pass ordinances is based on the general health, safety, and welfare of the community. So that's almost, that line is almost in every single ordinance I've ever brought forward to any city.
But is it mandated? Because you said it's in almost every single ordinance.
Well, I never say everything because there's always an exception, and Mr. McVoy is constantly catching me on that, so I have a little disclaimer.
Well, when Glenn comes back,
Yeah,
maybe he
you can
can give
ask
us some insight because it really doesn't make sense when it comes to this ordinance.
Well, I mean, you could
Or
scratch
it sort of does make sense that you're supposed to only do things that do meet that criteria, and this is one
All
that
right.
clearly
We're-
doesn't.
We're
So,
bad. We're beyond that. Okay, so,
but thank you for your suggestion. At least we would be more honest if we took it out.
okay, so now do we have enough guidance for staff? Oh, no, I think that's what,
Have we exceeded our time limit on this?
well, discussion with staff is not counted. What,
You kind of answered my questions. I mentioned that Commissioner Segridge had mentioned his little list, but I think that was mostly from the statute, the state information. But we kind of covered some of that. So
okay. All right. Okay, so
What
I
about
think
the grandfathering in or non-grandfathering in? How do we deal with people?
100%.
we
for
haven't touched
grandfather.
on the sports fields for the city
Right.
and grandfathering.
Okay, so I'm
There-
for sports field.
There's some other aspects of this that I'd want to
Well-
comment on.
But we only
We
have
all,
5
we
minutes,
really
so
don't have time.
we're supposed to be just going through and now going point for point and saying yay or nay, right? Sports field, yes.
Sports, yes. Grandfather, there's only I believe two cases where it's listed, but it's not the only violation.
No,
correct?
yeah, I just passed a house that the entire front lawn right on Federal, but 2-something Federal.
But you don't know if there's a code case on it or not. It
I
should not be-
I have no idea, but there's a nice, well, I don't know if it's nice. There is a front lawn that is all turf right there,
Mhm.
front and center.
Well, they can give them some, we can talk about that, give them some time to,
So would we,
change.
when we do this ordinance, are we
I
gonna give
might
time to?
Summarize, we have been putting out there at the various workshops on issues where you as the collective body had taken a very long time to make a decision. We put out there that we would give them a courtesy notice.
Mhm.
You have 90 days to correct your action. If it's not corrected, we would give a notice of formal violation. You have another 90 days to correct your action before it goes to the special magistrate. And then at that point, we would recommend another 90 days before a lien would run. So you have 270 days or 3/4 of a year to bring it into compliance. If you would like longer term, the longest term that I think we can legally defend is 120. That's fine. But I think when we get an ordinance back to you, because that direction on the grandfathering or how we would deal with co-compliance wouldn't necessarily be an ordinance change. It would be direction to staff in terms of enforcement and implementation.
Yeah, I think it should be that they have to come in compliance because otherwise, I
Right.
mean, I hate to say it, but people are gonna just go do it right now before this gets
Mhm.
drawn up and be like, ooh, I did it a day before. And we don't want that.
Okay.
Or
turn yourself in now to get grandfathered. All right,
you wouldn't be grandfathered. You'd have to come into compliance.
Again.
We needed an
I-
attorney
we
and
had a
there wasn't one in
question.
the room. Well, there was one, but not a
not the.
city
official one.
attorney.
The question is, Glenn, that, the whereas that says, is it required by statute that the whereas the city commission has reviewed the proposed amendments and determined it's the best interest of the public health, safety, and general welfare of the city to adopt the ordinance? Is that required statutory language?
We generally like to have that language in there because that it establishes a public purpose. So it's in probably 99% of the resolutions or ordinances, particularly ordinances that you pass, that you find that it's serving the public good.
I
If
mean,
you want to tweak it, you can tweak it a little bit, but that's the general reason why, so that if anybody challenges it, you made a finding that it's in the public interest.
could we take out
public
health and
interest, yeah.
safety and just leave the general welfare?
Sure. You could do that.
Because I would say that would. Okay, so let's do that. Okay.
Did my colleague?
Public health and safety?
Yeah, okay. I'm just keeping it.
Mine was close, but it was general welfare.
Okay. Are we there yet? Staff?
Anthony, I think
I
had
feel like I'm on the way
something
to
else.
Disney World. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Okay.
Okay, we're really past the time, Anthony.
I was trying to add something to add to the health and safety aspect that's missing from it, which I think is important.
What?
So right now, our ordinance doesn't address any kind of compliance to standards. I'd like to see us have in there compliance to the STC or ASTM standard. And that will help address the quality of the materials used. If they're compliant to that, they are going to have to be quality materials, not your Home Depot roll, not anything else. And that will address a lot of the concerns that you're trying to address through the installation guides. In terms of preventing someone from going out to Home
Talk to
Depot
staff
and do
and
it.
see if they can work something out in, but again, I don't think that we should be so specific. I think that we need to carry
Okay.
that.
And then the last was that we're requiring the location of all trees, palms, their species, size, everything as part of the plan for installing the artificial turf. I don't think we need to have people creating a site plan identifying every plant and their
Oh, I think-
species.
I think we do. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point, I think. So, yeah. So I think other than that, here's my tree. It's
Well,
not gonna be up to
Does
my
the
tree.
rest of the commission share that?
How do you feel
opinion?
about that? Should we have a little diagram? Are we against having a diagram where the tree is?
No, it's identifying every plant and its species in your yard.
It's
Where-
a
where are you
ficus
reading that?
tree.
That is line 238 to 243.
Yeah, site plan showing
The area of artificial turf,
Yeah.
the area of the living plant
Plant
matter, the
material.
location of all trees and palms, their species, size
Yeah.
and drip line, the root protection. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No.
I mean,
All
if
right.
if it did say every species, I would be up, what creek, because I don't know every species in my yard.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Not that I'm putting
Hey,
artificial turf in.
you look at it. Okay, all right, so.
It does say there's
Sorry, all right,
all
stop,
trees and
stop,
plants
please,
and their
stop.
species.
Palms. So, Mr. Brown's got the final word.
The last one,
You better be,
athletic fields,
right.
because I think we've kind
Right.
of tackled the
Yes.
rest. So that was the last.
Our athletic playing fields. What do you want to do about that, folks? All right, Mr.
Yes.
McCoy, again, 2 minutes each.
I am personally affected by that because it's right in front of my house. I'm very familiar with the concern about the fences around the soccer field being whatever the correct word is for passed through, by not through the gate. My feeling would be the same as I've had for a while. Let's do the experiment. Let's find out empirically. Leave it open for a while and see how it goes. I suspect it will be fine. And I think that is a better choice than directly going to artificial turf, which I suspect a lot of people in our neighborhood who are around that park would be very unhappy to have a huge field. It's about half the park being artificial turf. So I would say do the experiment, try it out, and then decide whether you want to move to the allowing artificial turf on it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. May?
On that point, just because we're saying that we can do it doesn't mean that we're saying we're going to do it. As we pointed out today, it's a very expensive endeavor. And I would think making an entire field would be a very expensive endeavor. And I do think that the city needs to be prudent in its money and how we spend money. So I don't know that that would be the next thing to put on the budget. So I think that we should put that we can, because let's think about like little things like in Bryant Park where they have the horseshoes. Where the horseshoes landed, there was some sort of artificial turf that had to be taken out, and then it becomes a litter box. So it's, we can't be, it doesn't mean that we're going to do it just because we can. That's all I got to say about that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so, I don't disagree. We don't have the money to lay out and make our football fields turf. Mr. Brown?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, kind of echoing Commissioner May. There are obviously it's a very expensive endeavor. It's not something we're going to go out right now and ask for everything. There are grants through FERDAP. There are different
Mhm.
things we would have to, it would just give the option
The
to
ability.
possibly go out and see if there is some money, some projects we could put together. But I did want to clarify, you said do the experiment because we dealt before with the overuse of the fields and they brown very quickly, which means we're now irrigating a lot more, trying to get them back green. So I wanted to clarify what exactly is the experiment that we're talking.
Leave it open and see how much usage you get and see what it looks like. It's brown now with it closed up.
The problem is, and you mentioned the cutting of the fence, and when we repair it, because we're constantly repairing it, a couple of days later it gets cut again. So they're already getting overused. We're trying to stop that because we do have actual organizations that want to use the fields. Well, that's going to stop if the organization come to use the field and they're not in good condition. And the reason that, and Commissioner Segrich had mentioned multiple municipalities that have gone this route, it's because of the demand for use and the overuse that they have gone to the turf fields. And that's what we're seeing, for instance, at Sunset, is there is a demand for the use because we currently have 2 days with 4 hours of both of those days where there's free play. The current ask is they want more free play. They want more time on these fields. We can't do that as long as we have organizations that want to come and utilize those fields because we can't keep the grass green. And no one's going to want to use them if it's just dirt.
Then it'll self-regulate. So try it out. Leave it open, see what happens. See if you find that
We've seen that.
it,
I mean, he's telling you that's what's going on.
Yeah, that's what we've seen. It completely falls apart, and we're trying to irrigate more and more and more, and using more and more water to try to get it green again to the point that. But
I'm not buying it from having walked it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so who wants to say that we may use artificial turf on city lots?
I'm in favor of it if it comes up and it's the right project and the right opportunity for grant funding or partnering with one of these entities to bring in a better field. Yes, I'm in favor of it.
Okay, Ms. May?
Yeah, I think anything that says non-city owned should be redacted.
Mr. Segrich?
In favor of it, but I think we need to follow some of the industry standards for compliance based on
Yes,
the
thank you.
activity.
Mr. McVoy, you're against it. I know, I can guess. It's a wild guess.
It's a guess.
Okay.
I think you did pretty well.
Thank you. You're so predictable.
Sometimes.
Yeah, okay. So there you go. Okay, thank you very much. It's time for a comfort break. Jesus.
Before COVID, and COVID started 5 years ago, March. Okay.
We are taking a comfort break. Could that be?
I was actually going to agree in the comfort break. I was.
Madam Mayor, are we ready?
Hello, Michelle.
Hi, Madam Mayor, it is 8:03 and we have reconvened.
Have we now? Okay. First,
We have.
let's see. First Amendment to the post-closing occupancy agreement for 501 Lake Avenue. Mr. Brown?
Yes, so this is just an extension that the CRA is granting to the city. And this is parking currently operates out of 501. So this is just extending that to June 30th.
Are we sure June 30th is the date that that's the end date?
That is currently the end date. And it seems that there is no desire for them to extend that any further than June 30th.
Motion to approve the First Amendment to the post-closing occupancy agreement.
Can I have a
Second for
second?
discussion.
Okay. Madam Clerk, are there any comments on this one?
No, Madam Mayor, I have no comments on this item.
Okay, thank you. All right, discussion. Mr. McVoy had his hand up first.
Yes, I'm happy to support the extension of the lease. I have no problem with that. I do, however, have a question regarding this building and property. And that is that as I looked back at the records of 501 Lake Avenue, that as far as I look back, went back to 2019, every time that any commission discussed it, it always referred to selling it for a price of not less than $340,000, except for one exception. When you look at Papa, it was sold for $10. And I'm not the math teacher here, I'm the soil scientist, but in my book, $10 is a lot less than $340,000. So I have two questions, which are either for the commission or for staff. Who authorized selling it for 10 instead of 340,000? That's question one. And question two of two is other documents that we've looked at recently said that the city would use the 340,000 that it received from the sale of 501 to pay for some of the city's portion of the arts alleyway. Does that mean that the city is only going to put $10 out of that 340 into the arts alleyway? And if it is going to put the 340 that the city did not receive, where is that 330 minus 10, 340 minus 10 going to come from? So those
Okay.
are two questions that don't have to be answered right now,
Right.
although if the answers are available, I think it's pretty important that we understand what happened there.
Well, tonight on the agenda is really just the extension for a month of the parking. I don't know if staff is, you know how I hate,
I don't know, William, if you're aware back then the sale, because that it obviously involved the CRA. I unfortunately was not involved with that back then, so I would have to get that answer
and
for you.
if you're
but
ready,
William might be.
that's a question that can be answered at a later date.
As I understand it, there was a quick claim deed in the consideration of $10 to convey the
They always
property.
put $10 on them.
They're all for $10,
Oh,
but the CRA did pay the city $340,000, and that's being held in an account in furtherance of the Arts Alley payment or Arts Alley creation between J and L. J and K, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other, Mr. Segrich?
So it's my understanding that after June 30th, there's an environmental phase one that needs to happen. And June 30th is kind of like the drop dead. And if we stay in that location longer than that, it's going to negatively impact a project timeline. So I'm in favor of the extension, but I would like to eliminate the option of extending with 14 days notice. So item 2, extension, the second sentence, in addition to the right, basically take away the option to re-extend.
I think that would, has the developer had a chance to look at this, or, the CRA? Mr. Brown?
I'm sorry, I was looking at the language. So you're saying in addition, the city shall write upon providing written notice that 14.
Providing written notice.
You're saying you want to
14
delete
days
out the.
prior.
Yeah, delete out the city's option to extend past June 30th. That feedback came from some of my discussions with the CRA.
Okay, Ms. Malega?
I would like to hear from the attorney on this, because I think that that would really pigeonhole us. I
Mhm.
mean, a day or two
Yeah.
is going to, not gonna detour the project, which obviously I have voted for the project. So I would like to hear from the attorney.
Real quick, Glenn, before you ask William, as far as, because I know there currently is a demo permit and that was submitted. It was not submitted. Because as far as the timeline for what would need to happen.
Okay. There are two parts to get a demolition permit. You have prerequisites and sign offs to do, which include water sewer, capping, rodent control certificate, lead-based abatement study, asbestos study. All those have to be turned in as well as sign off before you can actually apply for your demolition permit. It's a pre-application process. The CRA has money for this structure to be removed that has to be expended by, I believe, the end of August, and no later than that. The demolition permit itself cannot be issued until a site plan is presented to the HRPB concurrent with the demolition application, which tentatively is going to the HRPB on July 16th. So there is some pre-activity that could be done if the city were out of that building before the 16th, such as lead-based paste assessment, asbestos testing, rodent control, and capping off utilities and that sort of thing.
But they could go in there and do that. I mean, that's,
You can't, there are people in that building, so you really can't test for the asbestos
Okay.
or cap off the utilities
Okay.
until people are out of the building.
but that's the 16th of July, which is more than 14-day extension, if we needed a 14-day
I think the
extension.
desire was to have everything ready to go and have the demolition permit be issued as soon after the 16th as possible after the HRB hears the case.
Okay, but the, but it would have to be mutually agreed to in writing by the parties. So it's not like we're just gonna do it and they don't have a say in it. So,
Glenn, do you have any advice on this?
I think it really depends on what the needs are. I mean, Jamie, do you think they need the additional time?
I know at the plan is for the June 3rd meeting, we would have for your consideration an actual lease agreement for where the parking would be going into, which is actually a pretty good deal. So I don't know, but there is always the option of if there is a week or a 2-week lapse in there where we need to kind of move some staff temporarily, it would be a small time frame. So it's not that
so
big.
we
of a deal.
limit it to 14 days or 30 days?
Yeah, maybe,
30 days.
maybe additional 15 days or some, just in case.
I would limit it to a 30-day extension.
In the conversations that I had, the CRA is not going to agree for that use of that building by the city beyond June 30th. It is a drop dead date.
For the CRA,
We have to be out by that date. We were supposed to be out by March 1st originally.
all right, well, if that's the
Then why
drop
is the
dead,
extension why is
Yeah,
it even-
why-
is
why-
the
yeah,
language
why
in
is that
there?
even
I
in
think
there?
somebody might have missed it. I'm not the attorney who reviewed it.
Yeah.
Plan to believe.
all right, but I mean, it's,
So if it's dropped dead, we need to take it out.
That or it says mutually agreed to, so it would have to be mutually agreed.
unless it's mutually agreed to.
Correct.
Right.
That's actually, the mutual agreement is in the second sentence. It's
Right.
not the extension. The city can just get the extension.
To extend the term upon the same terms unless otherwise mutually agreed to by the parties. And it has to be agreed to. So, I mean. So if their drop dead date is actually July 2nd, I mean, that would come into play. For an extension, if we think we're gonna need the extension. So, I mean, if it's gotta be mutually agreed to, I would leave it in. If they want to agree to it, if they can.
Yeah.
If it's kept to the original terms and conditions, it doesn't have to be mutually agreed to. If it's different than the terms and conditions, it then has to be mutually agreed to. The word unless in there is what I'm keying on.
Yeah, it looks like all we would have to do is tell the
No.
CRA we're staying for 14 days.
No, it
And
says
that-
14 days prior. It doesn't say how long.
It doesn't,
Oh, I'm sorry.
it's,
Right.
we could extend indefinitely. It's just not specified. It's an
Oh,
open-ended
all right,
clause.
I'm gonna be quiet.
Uh,
Why can't we just add language that it is a date certain or with
Upon
with
mutual
the seven,
agreement.
with the seven,
Right.
but I believe that we need to put a term in there. 7 days, 14 days, whatever we can all agree on.
Well,
Extension.
upon mutual agreement, not that we can just tell them that they have to agree to it.
Yes.
No. All right, let's just change that.
All right, so
Give it 14 days notice, but it has to be mutually agreed upon. We have to give them notice that we need it and they have to agree to it.
So we remove the sentence, the city shall have the right.
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 Okay.
Okay, with those changes, do I have we have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Good. Next up, new business. Parking. This is a discussion. Okay. I have been against 25 reduction of parking for mixed-use developments from the get-go. We have approved them. I think that this conversation about people should bike, people should use public transportation is lovely, but I think people have cars, and I think we need to recognize that. So whatever that means to this ordinance, that's why we have parking issues with the mid, that's why we have parking issues with, may have parking issues with Deco Green. So what's already been voted on is vested. We can't change that. We can't take that back. But in the future, my personal thing would be that let's just, it's lovely to think that we're not going to need that much parking, but we do. Mr. McBoy, your light was on?
Are we doing the 5 minutes like through this conversation too?
We are going to test the predictability theory. I'm going to agree with the mayor. I too am all in favor of alternate modes of transportation, and use them, test it out regularly. However, I'm also in favor of learning from experience and empirical. And we've seen that the justifications for whatever they are for the 25% reduction, it doesn't work. So I would be in favor of eliminating it altogether.
Thank you. Who's next? Ms. May? Ms. Malega?
I don't like the 25% reduction. I never have, because as I said to Mr. Director Waters, multiple people are counting the same on-street parking.
Mhm.
And if
Yeah,
you live in my neighborhood where most people don't have a driveway or garage, you have 3 people and they all want to park in front of their own houses. It does pose a huge problem. So my only concern about taking it away completely is the lack of people being able to bring things to fruition, and we need job creation. We need investment in our city. So to me, I don't want to eliminate it completely. And then when I look at the language that's in here, that if we reduce the parking reduction to a percentage lower than 15% or eliminate it or alter its applicability, which all would entail changes to the future land use map and transportation. Is that costly? Is it timely? I need some more meat and potatoes with this language.
We would need to do an analysis to justify such a substantive change to our comprehensive plan. And I brought the various sections. What I would hope that you would provide is that parking in the city is a much larger discussion than the 25% reduction. And in no project have we allowed the same particular space on the street to be counted more than once for a project. You can only count those spaces adjacent to your property line towards your project.
Right, but like the Bohemian in the mid, and then the people who live on that street and the apartment, they all count the same spots that are on that side street. I digress on that. I have highlighted and circled the parking master plan needs to come first.
And that's what I think. We need to have a really come to Jesus, sorry the term, offends anyone, discussion about implementing a parking management program.
Well, and I
for the
thought that
city.
we were, I thought that the staff was working on that. Jamie's shaking his head
We
yes.
have been since 2018.
Okay, but Jamie's shaking his head yes, because we have given direction, very strong direction to bring that plan forward. So I'm in favor temporarily and then waiting for the parking master plan to reduce it to 15%. And then once we get the parking master plan, looking at it in more detail. And then taking into account the parking garage and the other things that are coming into play. But I am in huge favor of reducing it immediately to 15%. And then, like I said, looking at the
Okay, to
master
reduce it,
parking.
we would have to go through a formal change to the LDRs, which goes before the HRPB, the
It says right here,
It says
reduction to
15.
15%, which would not require a comprehensive plan change.
I'm not, the LDRs aren't a comprehensive plan. The LDRs are the LDRs, and if you want to change it from a 25% reduction to 15, it needs to be an ordinance change, and we have a series of ordinance changes that are probably going to be going to the HRBB and Planning and Zoning Board next month, and we can put in 15% change at that point, but you just can't carte blanche change the LDRs. I can take the direction you want to change it, and then we'll bring forward the mechanism to do that.
Okay, so let me just to clarify. So it doesn't, the 15 would not entail a comprehensive plan change, but it would still have an LDR change.
Yes.
So it might as well, if you're gonna do it, might as well go all the way.
Well, then that requires a comp plan change. because
Right,
there are references to in parking reduction incentives and parking reduction requirements in the downtown mixed use district, Dixie Highway Corridor. There are references made to parking reduction requirements in our mobility plan that we just adopted. It's all feathered through our comprehensive plan, and it goes back to the blight reduction of the CRA, how the city created surface parking lots, and the goal of the city for at least 25 years has been, we are not supportive of surface parking lots being in our historic downtown because that creates dead space. Our goal is to have a parking system that is owned by the public, managed by the public, which is we, the city, which has now resulted in recommendations more than, I think, 3 times for a parking garage, to reduce the parking impact and encourage other means of transportation so that cars do not become our main source of transportation. Because the idea that you're going to come to downtown and every single use should be fully parked makes no sense, because the average person who comes downtown may visit 3 places. Well, if each of those 3 places had to have all their parking, most of downtown would be gone and it would all be surface parking lots.
So the 15% allows us to move forward. HRP gives a recommendation, and then we can wait for the parking study to come back and then make additional changes if we want to. Correct?
We might, the parking study may generate changes to our comprehensive
Correct.
plan. Yeah, we could make.
That's what I'm
other
saying, and
changes.
clump all that together instead
Yes.
of doing double the work.
But it still has to go to the HRPV for the LDR.
And the
change.
Planning and Zoning Board.
Okay. Nothing's easy. Who is next? Miss May, Miss May?
Okay, so I'm, what was the original plan? Like, why did we put this in place? Was it to promote development?
It was put in place prior to my arrival, but what I have been told is
Oh,
that
so we're talking like 20 years ago.
the city sought to create public parking options. A la the CRA bought and developed 4 surface parking lot areas. You have the parking lot on K Street. There was one that's owned on J and Lucerne. And you also used to own the parking lot at K and Lucerne. I'm sorry, L and Lucerne, right across from Lucerne.
Right.
Somehow you sold it. I don't know how, because you have a charter preemption.
No.
I know you didn't.
We commissioned prior to us.
We, the city, sold it, and I'm not quite sure how, because when I first got here, the city manager at the time was trying to lease that parking lot back after we sold it to put a parking meter on it, and then we decided to drop the lease because nobody was parking in it because you had to pay. I'm like, well, why would you pay when all the rest of the spaces are free?
Right.
So we had a goal to create most of the parking on the public's dime to serve downtown.
Okay.
At the same time, we created an in lieu of fee, which originally was $15,000 a space. And if you expanded your business, changed the use and occupancy, built a new building,
Right.
added an addition, if you couldn't meet the parking requirement, you would pay this in lieu of fee, which wouldn't have created a real space.
Right. And that's the question I have here, because we're talking about literal space. And you can't create space like you just said. And so if we left the, all right, let me go back. Of the recent developments like Deco Green and even the ones that are in process but are not built yet, how many of them are paying in lieu of fees as opposed to deleting diminishing the parking by 25%?
Okay, it's two different questions.
Yes.
The first question is we have mixed use projects that have taken advantage of the reduction of mixed use counting. And that was Bohemian, the Mid, 7-Eleven, Deco Green, the project that came, Madison Terrace to some degree, but that was based on a different parking reductions incentive for affordable housing versus for mixed use. There are two other projects that have come in and failed and they have not gone forward. They've just kind of died that had an entitlement created that way. But the only ones that are built, and the Gulfstream Hotel, which isn't built yet, but the only three that have been built are Deco Green, the Bohemian, the Mid, and 7-Eleven on 10th Avenue, which all took advantage of a 25% reduction. The in lieu of fee payment only applies to development in the core of a downtown, which is from Gulfview to A, First Avenue South to Second Avenue North.
I see.
We've had two projects pay for a virtual space. There was a very large payment bay, and I think only the mayor will remember this. Rotelli's Italian restaurant expanded greatly. And when they did, at that time, if you did a change of use and occupancy that required a greater level of parking and you couldn't provide that parking, you paid the in lieu of fee. So they paid over $100,000 for parking that was virtual. But there's a parking fund that's set up. It was called something different at that time. And we're going to bring it back to you to make it a real enterprise fund, parking fund. The goal was to create a revenue of money to actually improve the public parking downtown, a la eventually a parking garage, knowing that parking that would tip the scale at some point, and the city would never have the money necessarily to do it on its own. The only other project since that time that has decided to pay is WMOTA's portion of meeting their parking requirement, which was in your development agreement that you approved, which is $1 million toward the parking that they can't provide on their own site.
Right. Okay, so I guess I'd like to ask what my colleagues think about taking the in lieu of parking fee away. I just think it makes me uncomfortable that people can
I've never loved it.
buy air.
And it's only the downtown core though.
We have projects that will not happen. If you think about the downtown, because there's been an argument that everybody should provide their parking that they should provide. The Gulfstream Hotel could not happen without the in lieu of fee parking program. The provision of apartments on two different projects downtown that have tentatively been approved, but they haven't moved forward. They've gotten approval, but they haven't gone to the permitting stage. They could not happen because they have nowhere to provide the parking that's required of their existing building, let alone adding on 3 units in one case and 2 in the other.
But in real life, where are the cars going to go? I mean, people are going to drive
a
them.
fund that we manage.
No, not the money, the cars.
That's what she's asking.
So if I pay 20 grand for
We don't have a parking management program, so they can park anywhere they want to downtown, including in the neighborhoods. And until you have a managed parking program that requires decals that could be free to residents, however you want to come up with it, you are going to have a parking problem. Doesn't matter how many parking spaces we provide, you are going to have a parking problem in this city until you have a managed parking program.
I understand. I don't need to be yelled at. I understand.
No, it's just, this has been a conversation that has gone on for the 14 and a half years I've been here.
Right, but not always
taken
with
no-
us, not always with us.
We have
So
not
I've
taken
not
any
had
formal
this
action
conversation with you.
To deal with the parking issue.
Understandable. But it's the 5 of us up here that need to make that decision at some point. And I'd like more, all I'm asking for is information that I don't know.
And we will stymie investment downtown if we do not have some mechanism to get out of in terms of paying and in lieu of fee. That even if it's a virtual space, that we can bank that money and hopefully provide some spaces later. You didn't use that money, but the concept was with the Bohemian parking garage is that there are businesses that would get redone over the west of Dixie that would make use of that parking who can't provide parking for themselves. But again, since all the parking on the street is free, why pay to park in the Bohemian?
I understand that. I understand that. And for sake of argument, let's assume that it's paid parking downtown. Okay. Then if you had a new development that didn't have enough spots and they paid money for in lieu of spots, where would they park?
They're parking what existing parking options we have, which we have lots of street parking. We have lots of public parking. It's, and maybe I'm the only person who doesn't have this problem. I've never had a problem finding a parking space in Lake Worth Beach.
Now,
I may end up having to park in the neighborhood or in front of the mayor's house, but I can park somewhere.
and let me ask a question just to follow up on yours. With the parking garage, we're gonna have more parking spaces with the parking garage than we currently have downtown, correct?
Yes.
So there'll be room.
Okay.
Our goal is to have
Yeah.
a net increase of at least 150.
Okay.
Okay. So you're saying that if we took away the in lieu of parking fee, that would stymie?
We would have some
Growth.
problems. Now, what it also,
Okay.
and when this was created, there was no Lyft, there was no Circuit, there was no Uber.
Right.
There are lots of ways to get downtown now. The golf carts weren't even popular.
Right.
There's lots of ways to get here without having to have a car. And our goal through the mobility plan is to utilize those other means of transportation, so you don't have to park a car.
Which is.
And I'm really
counterintuitive
not
to
thinking
really-
about people that are coming into the downtown to go to dinner, like they can pay to park. I'm thinking about people that live there. If somebody comes in and says, I want to build a 200 unit building somewhere there, down there, where are those people going to park if they're
Now,
allowed to pay
that's
for
where-
no
And I
parking?
think that this would fit in with a mobility plan, is that in the reductions of the parking that are there, you do have to still provide at least one parking space for every residential unit and 0.8 spaces for every employee.
Correct.
Regardless,
And even if it's a 2 or 3 bedroom unit, they're still only getting one spot.
if the developer chooses to go that route, yes.
So we're counting on the developer being good managers of the properties, which we found fails at Deco and Mid.
Well, Deco hasn't even opened yet.
Well, okay, at the Mid. And
Right.
because I remember you saying
and-
it's not a parking problem, it's a management problem.
And the Mid is also struggling in some respects because there's a lot of construction people parked there who are going to go away when the Deco Green finally gets finished. But there is a management problem, and I need to work with the city attorney is that, there's some mechanism to revisit when you've promised a certain delivery of service and you aren't providing it. I mean, I
Right.
personally have given out the personal cell numbers of developers to all kinds of people. If you've got a parking problem and you rented there and you were promised X, Y, and Z, and you're not getting X, Y, and Z, here's the people to call.
Right, okay.
I can't fix it. I'd love to try to help you fix your problem, but I really can't. But also someone renting a 2-bedroom unit and is only promised one parking space and then calls the city and demands, why don't I have 5?
Right.
Because I need my home help person. I need to have a place for me to park when I visit my daughter. My daughter's there and my son's there and the grandma's there and they all have cars. The person, this is 2 different phone calls. We rented in the wrong place.
Right. And I
Yes.
completely understand that. It's kind of like with the people at the art lofts when they want to park on Lucerne.
Right.
Well, sorry, you can't. And an art loft wasn't supposed to be a family of 5. It was supposed to be an artist. So I get that. So I'm going to listen then for some other
Okay.
comments.
Okay, Mr. Segridge.
So I think that some of these reductions need to be more specific by the zone that they're in. Right now, they kind of broadly apply with the exception of the pay in lieu. Also, when looking at the 25% reduction for doing like a mixed use development and so on, there's a very real difference of having, let's say, 100 residential units and 2 storefronts versus having 100 office units and 100 residential units, or 100 office units and 10 retail. I don't think a one size fits all ratio works out well, because what you can end up having is a largely residential project getting a 25% reduction just because they added 1 retail to it. So I think we need to consider something in there about, okay, it's really the retail where you're saying, okay, people are coming there during the day and the residents are coming back at night. And so the retail spaces are really using the resident spaces. So there needs to be, I think, some sort of more specific attention to that in terms of our
If you might
ratios.
read that, I think the mayor and I had this conversation when Lake Worth Station came in and wanted this. Our future land use categories have goals for what a mixed use would be. As an example, Dixie Highway, our goal is to be 75% residential, 25% commercial, mixed use, personal service, office. Same thing for downtown, because our economic development goal was residential versus something else. So we have taken that the next step and said for a fully mixed use project, 75% of it should be residential and 25% of it has to be the other uses. Some projects haven't quite met that. They've come close. But we haven't had anywhere it's been a substantial, like, oh, I put in one office and now I'm considered mixed use. Also, our planned developments have within them percentages of how the mixed use are calculated so that you can take advantage of certain density, intensity, and height bonuses. So we have a provision it could be better described than I'm describing it right now, of what the level of the mixed use would have to be. And so that would achieve some of our comprehensive plan goals.
Okay. And then some of the credits in there, you know, for bike racks and other things, you know, we may want to, you know, I understand we want to increase people using bikes and so on, but do we really want to give them a car space credit
No,
for
I
having a
don't.
bike rack? So I think we need to take a look at some of those. But in general, you know, I think in the downtown area, we have to realize that in the downtown, a lot of, you know, businesses and developments that are coming there, they're just not going to have the parking. We have to have public parking to handle that. So the pay in lieu becomes important. What is the current cost on that for the
We
pay in
just
lieu?
raised it this fiscal year to 25,000 a space.
And when we look at the new parking garage coming in, roughly, what is it costing us a space to build that new parking garage?
Don't know yet, but
Is it
I'm
roughly
gonna-
$60, $70, somewhere in that
Pardon me?
range? 60, 70,000 per
Oh, no,
space?
no, 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 no. Well, if it's that, then I'm just going to go ahead and quit and kill myself. Sorry.
It's been a long night.
No, literally, the parking garage has been
like-
the bane of existence for a while too. Let me find my calculator.
It's usually more like 30, 35, I think.
We're shooting for it not to exceed 34,000 a space.
Okay.
And we had proposed that in lieu of fee go to 30,000, and it was argued down to 25. But it used to be 7,500, and we finally got it to 15. I'm like, what could you do for 7,500? You
I
can't even buy
know,
the land for it.
stupid.
Mhm.
And so originally, when it was adopted back in the early 2000s, it was 15.
Is it in the schedule of fees?
Where it is.
Oh, so it could be changed this
We could
budget
change it this
season.
year.
Oh, yeah, we changed this budget season. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yes.
Oh, I see some enthusiasm over
Yes, we
there.
do. And we in the alternate spaces, we have a limit on how many other required spaces could be those alternative spaces. That limit, I think it's 25% of the required spaces can be an alternative type space. We could, you know, work on looking at that incentive as well.
Okay. And then
But the
last-
bike racks and the motorcycle spaces and the compact spaces and the tandem spaces have been very popular, and they have provided a mechanism for some projects to get to where they can be entitled where they otherwise could not.
Okay. And then the last piece, you know, just in looking at the different zoning, how different downtown is from some of the residential areas. I think, you know, in the residential areas, we don't have to be giving as aggressive parking credits. Because I think that does cause problems with our residential areas.
So could I ask a question to Anthony?
Yeah, real quick.
So are you saying that the fees, the 25% reduction should be in the zone where the in lieu of fees are, the zone that he described? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and then maybe in the residential area, maybe adopt something significantly lower or nothing at all. I would defer to the expertise to understand what to do there. But in general, I would think that these parking reductions are more geared towards a downtown type
Yeah.
environment. where we
Right,
want
right,
walkability
right.
and
So
big
the
development.
public-
Yeah,
we're
because
talking
nobody's
about
walking down Dixie Highway to get anywhere.
The mixed use
Well,
reduction only applies to the downtown zoning, mixed use east, mixed use Dixie Highway, mixed use Federal Highway, the TOD east and west,
yeah, but I would still consider
and mixed use west.
I would
Yeah.
still consider Federal Highway to be residential.
So mixed use Dixie Highway butts up to residential neighborhoods.
Same, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
And
exactly.
there's not much walkability there.
No, there's not.
So
Nor is
I
there
think
parking.
they would need parking.
Okay,
Sorry.
who is next? Mr. Roy, Ms. Mix?
I think I was, but Um, I liked what I heard from Commissioner May, which was the question, the unpredictable, who knows? It's fine that we have these in lieu of payments or we have these reductions because of mixed use. But that doesn't make these cars suddenly evaporate into the air. And for instance, you mentioned, Mr. Waters, that we don't have cases of, mostly 100 units of residential and 1 or 2 units of commercial, and now we reduced it by 25%. My understanding is that's exactly what happened at the Bohemian. That they said, well, we'll put in, they looked at our code. They were not dumb guys. They looked at our code and said, hey, if we promise we'll put a coffee shop or a whatever shop or a shoe store or who knows what in one of those things, now we get to call it mixed use. And suddenly the actual number of cars that however many units there are in the Bohemian, 100 plus, suddenly they have fewer cars. And suddenly their spouses or whoever else is in the apartment doesn't have a car. And suddenly nobody comes to visit them has a car. Because one, it makes no sense. We're looking at W Motor where, and we argue that it has to be shared space. We're looking at W Motor where there's an apartment building, which they've said, we're building underground parking, and you can argue about whether that's a good idea, whether it'll work, whether it'll be a problem for the neighbors, who knows, but leave that out of it. They're building parking. One space per apartment. A number of those apartments have 2 bedrooms. Even the 1-bedroom ones likely will have a couple. These are luxury apartments. This is not mostly affordable housing. It's a minimal amount of sort of semi-affordable. Is it realistic to think that luxury apartments that they'll all be single people who only have 1 car? I think that's ludicrous. And supposedly what gives the ability to have that 25% reduction is there's a museum next door. But if you look in the language, it says very explicitly, the apartment parking is only for the apartment. So where is the shared use there? And there's essentially no on-site parking for the museum. To me, and I think nobody in this room would be surprised to learn that I'm a big fan of alternative transportation and alternative mobility and, getting around on whatever vehicle, and I do it. I come to these meetings on an electric bicycle, dressed like this. We'll see how it works in August. But realistically, I am with the mayor. I am with Commissioner May that these cars are going to be here. And you can't just sort of wish them away by, how about we let them pay into a pot? Where are those going? And so I would get rid of the 25%. It's a giveaway to the developer that it makes things nice for them. But it creates a problem for everybody else. It's not realistic. So that's one. I would certainly,
for a minute, the justification that, there's a difference between a by right project and one that goes just through the Planning and Zoning Board of Preservation Board, and then a plan development. And a plan development can ask for all kinds of waivers and deviations from the code, which is what the MID did, Deco Green did, Village of Lake Osborne, Village of Lake Worth, and the Bohemian. And part of the argument with the Bohemian, because this was all happening at the same time, was that we'll reduce their parking because we are going to have a public parking garage, which those people who actually want an extra car or have visitors or whatever will go park in that parking garage and pay to park there. Because at the same time, the city was like this close to adopting a paid parking program to manage parking downtown. Unfortunately, good, bad, or indifferent, we've had changes in political winds, changes on commission, COVID. The Bohemian opened, I think it's knocking on the door 3 years ago, and we haven't adopted the parking program, which would have forced those people with extra cars to park in the Bohemian's parking garage because they couldn't park on the street, or if they did, it would be more expensive to park on the street than in the parking garage. So again, it's like a complete circle thing, is that all of our parking, no matter what we put in place, required parking, not required parking, reductions, incentives, whatever, we have to manage our public parking realm. There's no way around it.
Okay, Ms. Malega.
Thank you. So, again, I'm gonna go back to, I think we should go and just reduce it to 15% now until we get the parking plan, and then we can look at mixing it all together if that's what the parking plan and gives us instruction to do. I do have a question in regards to the location, and you and I had spoke about it. I'm sure that the core area was written many years ago to stimulate development downtown.
Yes.
When is the last time we looked at the borders and the boundaries of this core area? Because when I look at this language, I think of the empty lots that are on Federal Highway that need to be developed. I think of the lots on Dixie Highway. I don't think of downtown anymore. So to me, the core and the location of this parking in lieu of doesn't make sense anymore. And because I look at the boundaries, I'm like, okay, A Street to Gulfview, First Avenue South to Second Avenue North, that's the strip. And there's really nothing here that's going to come in my opinion, again, that is going to warrant this. But I think that if we want to stimulate certain areas like South Federal Highway, and we want to be able to bring people, I think we need to look at that language as well as the actual location and the core of who gets the parking in lieu of, the fee in lieu of parking, because it's only for that small quarter. It doesn't apply to people on North Dixie, on South Dixie, all over the city. So I think that this is also going to be looked at in the next conversation. Maybe bring some more language back into where that parking and the fee in lieu of parking could help the city and help the residents and bring in more economic development. I don't think the downtown is where it's at anymore.
Okay, well, it was looked at prior to my getting here, and then as part of our LDR and comp plan updates took place in 2012, August, and August 2013. It was reevaluated in 17 and 18 when we did a really major comp plan update. Part of your challenge, and it will be our challenge, is that the in lieu of fee, when you collect the money, there has to be a rational nexus to where that money is going to get spent. So if we were collecting in lieu of parking payments for Federal Highway, where does the city think it's going to build public parking to provide that in lieu of space at some time in the future or whenever?
Well, how far, what's the limit? How far?
It should be within, based on our mobility plan, a quarter of a mile.
But wouldn't Circuit, couldn't you do
But
things
Circuit
like-
is not an in lieu of space.
So it's the actual space that we have to offset.
Now, what we
Even though
can
we're
do
trying to
is-
do a mobility plan and promote alternative modes.
And see, there's, so at some point in the future, you're going to, as you're a developer, you're going to be looking at paying a sustainable bonus fee if you want a building larger than 2 stories. You're going to be paying a level two sustainable bonus payment if you want to have additional height, density, or intensity above what the code allows. You will be paying a mobility fee based on the type of development you're kind of bringing in. You will be paying a recreation impact fee based on the type of development. There's going to be a crossroads where likely we will determine or be told to determine that some of the fees we're charging are excessive, or are they combining into the fact that they are
Duplicative?
similar duplicative fee. But again, like with the in lieu of, maybe it's not in lieu of, we replace the in lieu of fee with a mobility fee. And then it could go to a parking, it could go Circuit, it could go to what else?
That's
variety
what
of things.
I mean, I would really think that we should
That
look
would
at
make
that,
much more
because if we
sense.
have this mobility plan, we're trying to make people not use cars. I just think that that's the route we should be going at, not looking backwards at what used to work, what's going to work now and for the future. And I don't think this core locations work.
Mr. Secretary has his light on.
I also think we need to take a look at the affordable housing credit on it. Just because it's affordable housing, I don't think negates the amount of cars that are utilized. I think it actually increases the amount. You're a lot more likely to have a roommate situation and so on. So understanding the mixed use, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the affordable housing, we can get into trouble, especially in some of the areas outside of the downtown, like the mixed use Dixie Highway and so on. And I was going to say, the fee in lieu, we need to have somewhere for them to park. And we don't have that now in some of those areas. So, having this parking credit in areas where we don't have a public parking option, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense unless we're planning something. And if we're going to plan something, let's plan something and then we can work around that. But right now, a lot of these areas, like some of those empty lots down, 600 South, Dixie, You take away those parking spaces, there's nowhere for those people to park. They're not going to park on Dixie. Where are they going to go? You know, it's all going to backflow into the residential streets there. And we already have that problem with the cloisters and the townhomes that are right there. I mean, they're parked all up around the side of it. They don't have enough parking. And just adding to that, I think would be bad. So they do, none of them use them.
Nobody uses a garage to park stuff.
But-
Nobody
but,
uses
you know,
a
it's-
garage.
it's-
Like that place that you showed me on some other street.
It's just the reality of it, you know, and yet you can say it's a management problem and so on, but then we have to worry about that. But if we exasperate the problem by giving them additional credits in addition, because technically I think those places have 2 spaces per unit, if not 2.5.
And
But they
that
don't use
gets
them.
back to your management of parking. If you have a planned development that has 2 off-street spaces and a garage, maybe you can't get but one, depending on what you decide, guest parking pass. You've been provided parking off-street, you're done. Now, the person who was maybe here historically and had a 25-foot lot and has no parking at all, maybe they can get 2 on-street parking decals. But that's part of, the implementation of a parking management plan is going to be really complicated. But almost every one of our townhouse projects that has garages, I would say conservatively 65% of those units cannot use their garage to park a car.
Start cleaning your garages. out, people.
Cannot, because it's got something in it, including
Okay,
people
well-
living in the garage.
All right, but that's not cannot, that's do not.
Choose.
They,
not to.
they choose not to.
Well, if it's been illegally converted to a living space.
That's a
Well,
choice.
That's a choice.
But still, I'm just trying to be as nice as I can that you,
No, don't be nice. That's a choice that they've made that's illegal. So if that affects their parking, well, tough.
yes. So, yes, parking is a big ball of wax.
Okay. I know, really. It's like,
I'm going to hire her. She's great.
what did she say now?
Laugh track back there.
Keep me going in the
All right.
right direction.
So there's a proposal. Do we have a motion in our? No. All right, let's get a
Are we
motion.
motioning on this
We need, well,
I provided.
I think we're just
it's a
giving guidance.
discussion. Okay, it's a discussion.
Staff to bring back parking regulatory amendments.
Right, but it's,
I make a motion for staff to bring back a reduction, reduce the parking regulation to 15%, which would not entail a comprehensive plan change until the parking master plan is done.
I can second that.
all right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
I do want to add an editorial comment to the comment about affordable housing. Providing parking exponentially makes the affordable housing that much more difficult to provide. And in our comp plan, as well as in statutory language, it is highly encouraged, if not required, to reduce the parking requirements for affordable housing. Otherwise, it will not happen. And people do use the argument that you get a roommate. Well, in some instances, it's illegal for you to get a roommate to meet your housing
Mhm.
number, because
I was gonna say that.
our code is a little different than others, but our code limits the overall household income regardless of how many people are living there legally. If it's a 2-bedroom, you can have 4 people, and those 4 people combined cannot have an income that exceeds a certain amount. Now, some of the other affordable housing regulations are a little difficult to get around because we've had some people apply, and I don't want to throw them under the bus, but I can't help it. Using the housing exchange program to meet our housing requirement, which meet our affordable housing requirements. So we've asked, how do you ensure that the people that are in the unit are meeting your housing limit in terms of income? And you've seen articles in the paper where people who are paying affordable rent and market rate rent, and they're the same. I have been unable to get, do you check? Do you do monitoring? Do you require reports? What is it, so that we can get a copy of that? Because there's one that's gonna be opening soon, that it have to be some documentation that those affordable units are staying affordable.
Right.
Well, it seems like that part of enforcement, once it's granted, as you've seen in the paper, seems to be a little loosey-goosey.
Well, with rentals, because with purchases, it's not loosey-goosey. You get a reminder, certified regular mail, and an email once a year reminding you of who can live in the house, how long the house has to be, stay affordable, yada, yada, yada.
And
Yeah,
have
and
a
we did
reporting
find-
requirement for ours too. And we're, if someone's going to use a different program, either low-income housing credits, the housing exchange program of the county, or a SHIP program or whatever, we would like to be included in that reporting, so that we can tick off, yes, these required affordable units are staying affordable, but that is proving a bigger challenge than I thought it would be.
Well, when we were at the housing thing, okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
It wasn't.
Mr. Brown.
I just did it once.
Jesus Christ, I'm right here.
So just to make sure we're all clear, I believe I heard a 5-0. Okay. And this was for number 2, reduce the
Yeah.
parking to 15%, which would not entail a comprehensive plan change. As Director Waters said before, the LDR change would be added to the agenda for the June HRPB.
Well, I think I got to check with Annie and Scott, but I think what we call our first round for 2025 is scheduled to go to the HRPB, I think the 3rd meeting in June, and then it will be the first meeting in the 3rd Wednesday of June, and then the first Wednesday of July for the Planning and Zoning Board, and then it will come to you thereafter.
Okay. So tentatively,
Within
based on
3
what-
months, we'll have it back.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware that that was the
Time frame.
going forward. Okay.
All
And
right, so-
before we move on, I have some
Yes.
public comment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't have a card. And Ramsey's got one. Come on up, Ramsey, and also.
Fine, great, thank you.
Ian Blake.
His water's gone. He has depleted over there for corner.
Rames Cloud, 24 South C Street. A lot of what I have to say here has already been addressed, so I'm just going to bring out a couple of points. One of the things I don't understand, gets very complicated when trying to figure out what size vehicle actually fits into the parking spaces currently allowed. I mean, what size vehicle fits into an 8/10 of a parking space for an employee to park in? These are things I can't grasp my head around. If you see trucks, they've grown enormously larger than they were when I bought mine several decades ago. And yes, we know two developments have had seriously negative impacts on residents and businesses near them. And I think that one of them, the Bohemian, has had very serious impacts on new businesses like the coffee shop to the east of them and the building at 1005 Lake Avenue. So since we get complaints about nobody's using that garage, why don't we try selling part of it back to the Bohemian? And maybe that would allow them to get the residents to park in their own garage instead of on the street, and allow businesses to finally have spaces for them to be utilized by local individuals or anyone who wants to use them. I do have a concern about developers being able to pay a fee in lieu of providing necessary parking spaces in the downtown corridor. And I think your ideas are on board with getting some changes made there. I'd like to see the reduction from 25 to 15. I really think we need to place a greater burden on the developer to provide their needed parking spaces instead of on the shoulders of residents and businesses in the area. I think that we should also consider when a developer comes in, we have the requirement minimum of 1 parking space per unit, but I think it should be altered for how many people you have in there and address maybe additional fees if you need 2 spaces. Or have the requirement that they create an overflow or guest parking area for individuals with units that have one more than one
That's
vehicle
time.
associated with it. Thank you.
And we haven't mentioned handicap parking, which we have such a dearth of handicap parking in our downtown. It's really a shame. So, okay. We have a motion. We have Madam Clerk, you've got some comments?
I do.
Let's hear 'em.
The first one is from Richard Mahler, 1767 15th Avenue North. Dear Mayor and Commissioners, based on the options provided by staff, I urge you to reduce or eliminate the parking reductions currently offered to developers. The 25% reduction for mixed use and affordable housing projects is simply too high and only adds to our city's longstanding parking issues, especially in residential neighborhoods adjacent to downtown. While future development is important and needed for the ongoing health of our city, it must be balanced with realistic parking requirements to avoid burdening our community and neighbors. A reduction below 15% or removing the incentive entirely, even temporarily, would be a practical and sensible step in preserving neighborhood quality of life and address current or future parking needs. Thank you for your consideration. The next one I have is from Catherine Nolan, 222 North Palmway. Dear Mayor and Commissioners, I am writing to express my concerns about the 25% reduction of parking requirements for mixed-use developments. Given the current property development market and the reported parking-related challenges for completed projects like the Mid, this incentive seems excessive. Requiring developers to provide adequate parking spaces for their properties is crucial in mitigating traffic congestion and ensuring the overall accessibility of our community. I urge you to consider reducing or eliminating this incentive to promote better planning and functionality in our developments. Thank you for your consideration. The next one that I have is for Sam Smith, 109 North Palmway. I appreciate the fact that the city is finally holding discussion on this issue, as there is a new development parking crisis that is just getting worse. The clearest example of a city development parking screw-up is located at the Mid, and it appears the city is replicating the same exact mistake at Deco Green. It is clear that neither of these two very large developments have sufficient on-site parking for their residents. As a result, the city has made life miserable for city residents that own property on the side streets near the Mid. Overflow parking from the Mid often extends 4 blocks or more into the communities to the west, blocking homes, driveways, and making two-way traffic dangerous since cars are parked willy-nilly all over the place. I'm not clear how the city approved these two developments without sufficient parking, but let's stop the bleeding now and not give parking discounts or reductions to any more developers. Another area that needs further review is the city counting on-street parking towards parking requirements for the quadruplexes that keep being built left and right on South Ocean Breeze and other spots. These quadruplex developments don't even come before the commission, so there is no way to catch the lack of parking. Rather, staff just approves these developments with the insufficient on-site parking. Please fix this ordinance ASAP. New developments should be required to have on-site parking. The next comment that I have is from Marion DeJong, 2381 Sunset Avenue, apartment 110. The ceramic collection plus 100-unit apartment proposed for our downtown, WMOTA, is a particularly horrible application of this 25% parking reduction. Why? Because staff has argued that we have a parking shortage downtown, yet they are allowing the developer to provide 25% less parking based on sharing of ceramic collection building and apartment building parking. Yet the agreement specifically states the opposite, that the apartment building parking is only for the apartment building, i.e. not shared. I am against the parking garage being built downtown. Move the whole thing, museum garage, 110 apartment buildings to the west side of Dixie, near the Hatch and other glass studio. The Benzonite Center for Creative Arts makes so much sense. The next comment that I have is from Jenny Powell, 224 North Palmway. Good evening, Mayor, Resch, and Commissioners. I oppose granting shared use parking reductions to developers of mixed use projects and believe this provision in the LDR should be eliminated entirely. It is essentially a giveaway to developers, shifting the burden to tenants and taxpayers when shared use parking fails to function as intended. By the time issues arise, developers have already benefited and moved on, as seen with the Mid development and the Bohemian. This is likely to repeat with WMOTA's proposed project if the shared use parking provision is granted, adding to the already $19 million subsidy proposed for Mr. Weiner. Mr. Weiner should pay the city $25,000 for each parking space he cannot provide on-site as currently required by the shared use provision. Alternatively, he could reduce the size of the project and provide all needed parking on the L&M parcel site. This would eliminate the need for the city's proposed K Street parking garage and prevent the imposition of Page Street parking downtown. Coupled with the available street parking on First Avenue and Second Avenue North and in the City Hall parking lot, we have more than enough parking for downtown during peak seasonal needs for the foreseeable future. Additionally, there is no credible evidence that the proposed mixed-use development of the proposed Wamoto Museum and Cafe will draw the projected 50,000 visitors annually. If it fails, what then? The Bohemian, which also received a shared use parking concession for mixed use, has struggled to fill its commercial space after over 4 years. The last comment that I have is from Catherine Kohlmeyer, 503 First Avenue South. Specifically regarding the proposed development of 110 apartments and a museum on the L and M Street lots, the mixed use 25% parking reduction for this development makes absolutely no sense. The development will lose 65 parking spaces and then will provide 25% fewer than the minimum requirement for the 110 apartments in its underground garage. At the same time, the city is saying it needs a new parking garage and is proposing paying the same developer to build a parking garage on land where a parking lot is already in use. On top of this, the city does not have the funds, so it is planning to borrow money from the same developer it is paying to build the garage. This is a very bad deal. We do not have to oppose development in principle to oppose such a bad deal for the city. This one example, it shows what a bad idea in general mixed-use parking requirements waiver is. Please stop the mixed-use minimum parking requirements waiver. That's the last comment I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Ian Blake from Boynton Beach had submitted a card, but I believe he went home. Okay, thank you very much. Now, did we vote? I think we voted. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Did.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, moving right along. For new business B, agreement for legal services with Bajo Cohen Agliano, PA, for representation of the city related to the April 2024 damage to the city's sewage pipe force main. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the agreement with legal services.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do all in favor?
I have a question.
Okay, all right, go ahead. Ms. Malega first.
When we go through the lawsuit or whatever is gonna happen, these fees will be portioned into us being reimbursed, correct? As part of the attorney's fees?
No, there's no guarantee that our fees are going to get recovered from the other side because we haven't even filed a lawsuit yet. But certainly if there's a settlement, we're going to be considering fees as well. But we're talking multi-million-dollar claim. If you remember, you previously authorized another firm, which has done some groundwork on this. But we conducted an interview a couple weeks ago, Mr. Brown, myself, the utility director, Ruth Holmes' office, and we all agree that this firm is very well qualified. They specialize in these kind of hits, underground hits, and we feel very confident that this is the right firm to bring that forward. So we'll be paying their fees. Hopefully the recovery will far exceed whatever their fees will be.
Well, plus the 15 million that we're out.
No, not, again, I'm not aware of any basis that, let's say it's AT&T, would have to pay our legal fees. They have to pay the damages. We're going to seek the fees. I'm not saying we're not going to seek them, but I can't guarantee that that's going to be paid.
Okay.
Attorneys at different.
No, we're still using Michelle on the Palm Beach matter.
Mr. Severich?
I had basically the same question, and just didn't know if we wanted to put in the agreement that they would try to do, like, proposal for settlement or offer for judgment to try to recover the attorney's fees.
I'm sure when it gets to that point where, and just give a little more background. So the first step is generally filing a notice of claim, a real claim with them that's detailed as to every penny that's been spent by the city. We would expect that there will be a lot of pushback because this isn't just AT&T. They're subcontractors, many subcontractors. So this is going to be
Done that?
No, that's one reason we're making the change, because we think that this will be a much stronger claim to make at this point.
My other question was just about the E&O amount. Right now it's at 300,000. That's pretty low for a law firm, in my understanding. Is there any reason we went with 300,000 versus like a standard 1 million, 2 million?
It's been the amount in our previous agreements. We could always increase it either in this agreement or for future agreements if you'd like.
This is a multi-million dollar lawsuit. I personally would like to see us have a E&O insurance amount that's commensurate.
That's no problem.
Mr. Brown had his on first.
If we had kind of moved on from it, but to answer the vice mayor's question, we're taking this measure because we have not been satisfied with the current progress with who we had
Or lack
before.
of.
Yeah,
So do
so
we-
we interviewed additional firms. This is out of those firms who we were really comfortable with getting this thing moving and pushing this forward.
So we're gonna do a substitution of council,
Yes.
Yes, sir.
and they know that?
Verbally, yes, though I won't send the letter till tomorrow, obviously. We want to make sure you approved it first. And I'm sure they'll still cooperate. I mean, we have a good relationship with the other firm. And, but this particular firm definitely specializes in these kind of areas. I mean, we found them by researching other cases like this, and we noticed their name was popping up. And then,
I was just
yeah,
gonna say.
exactly. In the good column. And as Jamie said, when we interviewed, and there were other firms that also were very good. When we interviewed, they unanimously, we all thought they were the best choice.
Clarify what Mr. Segrich was just, I didn't understand anything you were just.
Oh, so in the category of insurance on page 4 of the agreement, we have professional liability, Arizona Mission at 300,000. He's suggesting increasing that to $1 million, which is a good suggestion. So we can make that change. We'll resend this agreement to that law firm. I'm sure they'll have no problem with, increasing that.
My question's answered. Thank you.
There you go. You turned the light on. It's spoiled.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. All right, do we have, so we have voted on that?
No.
No. we
No.
haven't voted.
You have a first and a second, Madam Mayor.
I'm sorry?
You just have a first and a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
No,
Passes unanimous. Good night. Motion adjourned. Who seconds that motion?
Ramsey did.
Commissioner May did.